Hi, welcome everyone to the 2021 NSIN Propel Demo Day. My name is Sahil Jain, and I'm one of the directors here at New Lab that works on our innovation studios. Really excited to have everyone here today. We are been in partnership with Decisive Point, Air Force Research Lab, and NSIN Propel over the last 6 months, where we've sourced and supported a range of startups working in the dual use space, helping them gain and validate traction within the defense and government areas. Before we kick off today's program, I wanted to quickly go through the agenda, let everybody know what they're in store for. So we'll be starting with a few welcome remarks from our Chief Product Officer at New Lab, Satish Rao, founding partner at Decisive Point, Tommy Hendricks, and John Rivnak, who's a program manager at NSIN. After this, we will have a keynote talk by Lieutenant General Michael Nagata, and we'll also have a spark talk from a former NSIN Propel alum, Python, Dexter Eng, who's the chairman and co-founder, will be talking about their company and the success that they've had as a dual-use venture. After that, we will have our startup presentations. 11 of our cohort companies are with us today that will be talking about their technology and the work that they've been doing over the last 6 months of the program. We'll then end the morning portion with a talk from our partner at AFRL. Encourage everyone in the audience and online to submit questions and raise their hand. For those of you that are online, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we'll be running around mics after every startup presentation to kind of engage the audience a bit. For those that are online as well, we would love for you to send us a note at ensignpropel@newlab.com if you're interested in connecting with any of the startups that are speaking here today. And happy to facilitate any ongoing follow-up conversations with our cohort companies. So really excited for today, and with that, I would love to introduce Satish Rao, our Chief Product Officer at New Lab.
It feels great to see everybody in 3D, so thank you for taking the time to come up and be with us today. So we'll get into a little bit of what the NSIN Propel program is about, but I first want to just give a lot of thanks to a few groups that really made this possible. So first, John Rivnak, Dan Madden, Pete LaMonica, who conceived this idea at the end of last year, got it funded, and trusted Decisive Point and New Lab to really run this thing for this year, which has been really an incredible kind of concept, idea, and now execution, which you'll see today. Sahil Jain and Brianna Ryan from the New Lab side, who've been the engine on our part running this program leading up to this day, which have done an incredible job. So a quick hand to them for putting this together. And then finally, and then of course, Decisive Point, which have been incredible partners. It's rare that you run into partnerships that just seem to kind of fit right away from day one. From the first proposal we wrote, to the decks, to conceiving the projects, recruiting the companies, and kind of bringing it all to today. It's been a great and wonderful journey with them, and we hope that we can keep going with Tommy, Ryan, and Eric, and the rest of the Decisive Point team, which you'll hear from later today. So more thanks for them. But the most important thing, which you'll hear about from the New Lab side as well, and Decisive Point would say the same thing, it's really about the companies, right? We're trying to build a platform, but ultimately it's these great companies that are building incredible products, they're backed by investors who believe in them, and we're trying to get them to expand further in the defense, in the market of the federal market to serve our defense in the United States. And so a big hand to the startups for all the work you've done so far, and there's more to come, so thank you so much. So I think it's appropriate to spend a little bit of time talking about the New Lab story. I was listening to a podcast from this documentarist that produced a lot of films about American history, about American figures, and he kept quoting this Mark Twain quote that says that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And I think that says a lot to the New Lab story. And so where you're sitting is the Brooklyn Navy Yard that was started in 1802. And from 1802 to about 1960, this was the premier center for building naval ships for the US military. Around 1930s, about the peak, we had 70,000 employees here in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. There were dedicated trams that came from the various neighborhoods to bring the workers to this place to build ships for the World War I, World War II. Perhaps just as importantly, veterans that came back from wars would come back here and take jobs and be part of that process along with advanced engineers. Behind you in the New Lab facility, here's a picture of it being active. The USS Missouri, USS Arizona were assembled in the facility behind you. So the original gantries are still in place, as you've seen when you walked in. Put parts together, attach engines, and put ships across the dry dock on the other side. That happened for years here. Post-1960, this area was decommissioned and given back to New York. And so when our two founders of New Lab approached this space and were given the opportunity to do something else with it, this is what they walked into. A vacant space, a tree growing out of it. And so the mission was, how do you bring back that level of innovation to this area? How do you bring back jobs? How do we get back into advanced technologies and building things for the US, for both commercial, industrial, defense? And so the vision was to turn this into a place that would be collaborative, that would attract tech engineers and hardware startups and sort of physical sciences that come back to New York. And so here we are today at New Lab. And so what we are is essentially a platform that's a collaborative approach to bring in founders, investors, industry and government partnerships together to really do great things. And so in the space, you know, what we've created is this integrated approach where you put that all together and sort of amplify everyone. And so the way we do it is through 4 integrated business units. And so the first are innovation studios. That's the way we call it. NSIN Propel is an example of that program. And so how do you understand the problem sets from our corporate or defense partners? How do you align that with advanced platforms that are being developed by the startups in the world? And how do you put that together in interesting testing environments for validation? And we really believe that validation is key to creating interesting partnerships and future business between the startup and the client. And so we've had about 50 partners to date, and I'll talk a bit more about some of the work we do there. We've increasingly gotten involved in starting new companies, and so opportunistically working with serial entrepreneurs that come to New Lab and say, I want to start my next company with you. You're great as a co-founder, you've got a great set of services, I want to be in your space, you have investors, let's do something great together. And so we launched 2 last year and likely launching another one this year. Everything starts with our membership. There's over 200 companies that are New Lab members. The NSIN teams are also New Lab members just by participating in the program. And so they have access to the space. And the way we build the community is very much focused on certain themes, frontier technology, and sort of a balance, kind of like a Noah's Ark approach to how you build a community. And what that means is incredible collaboration. So I was just speaking with Dexter at Python this morning. I'm going to introduce him to a robotic arm company, Electron, right next door, to figure out how you can do some interesting integrations and testing together. And we had really serious and interesting business outcomes based on this collaboration. So the organic kind of interaction between really great minds happens a lot in New Lab. And then finally, investments, right? So we want to drive business here. We're not just about we are about mission, but we're also about business. And so we are investors. And we invested in about 20 plus companies to date because we see the deals in front of us. It's not just looking at a pitch deck or having 10 different meetings. We're looking at companies' tests. We're looking at how they succeed in certain environments, and then we see things that traditional investors don't see. And so it's a really nice model that's kind of come together as we've grown the business. And so just at a glance, here's sort of the numbers by the community, 200 plus members, valuations going up. There's an interesting balance in New Lab as well. We're not an incubator. We don't take equity from companies for being in the building. We don't take equity from companies for being in the programs. And so what you get is a nice variety of maturity in companies as well. So it's about 6 of the companies in New Lab are valued about 200 million or more. And we still have the companies that are the 2 founders coming in with their first SBIR or their first seed check, right? So it's a nice balance in that way as well. We have great diversity, and then probably the thing we're most proud of is the resiliency of this business during COVID. And so co-working, obviously that was on fire last year, and so we dropped to about 50% occupancy. It was a sad sight seeing companies literally shut doors and leave the space towards the end of last year. Came roaring back, and why is that? Because hardware and tech startups need to be together. You have to build, you have to collaborate. This is not something you do at your desk. And so what happened in January? Our occupancy shot right back, and now we're back at 97%, so pre-pandemic levels, which is amazing. So programs like NSIN Propel, the model that we've built with Decisive Point is taking off, and it's working in commercial as well as government spots. And what people see in the platform is really focus on product. And so we are not teaching entrepreneurship. We're not necessarily teaching as much about customer discovery. We're teaching about how do you understand strategy and needs of your client, and how do you fit your advanced tech into that solution, right? And so we're doing this with Ørsted and renewable energy, with Ford and Detroit around all sorts of challenges around EV and EV infrastructure and AV infrastructure. Verizon 5G, there's 5G network outside, so we fly robots and robotic arms on 5G and edge computes, super hyper speeds and performances that we can demonstrate in the products. We run a program in Uganda, building 100 pilot homes, incorporating advanced design with local materials to build homes in a refugee camp in Uganda. We work in mining, sustainability in mining. So all the things that you think are difficult, are legacy, are complex, New Lab loves to play in that space. And most importantly, the startups we work with love to play in that space, which is why this is perfect for DoD, right? The very technologies that we leverage for these industries are very much relevant for many aspects of DoD needs. So that's the vision of NSIN Propel, is to bring all of that focus into the federal market. And the companies you'll see today are very much an example of that. Global innovation in 2021, we believe in outcomes, right? So this is, again, today you're seeing towards a middle or an end of a lot of work that's happened between us and the startups and the different defense customers we've brought in to the fold. And so, but just by the numbers, our studios have generated over 600 plus applications globally just in 2021. And most importantly, 30 different pilots launched across those programs that I described. So we're talking about EV chargers in the field in Detroit, chemistry solutions at a mining plant in India, robotic dogs or drones flying in the New Lab space on the 5G network. These pilots are very real, and they're being designed in the sense to prove their value to the customer that we're working with in the studio. So it's a great way to shrink the enterprise sales cycle for the startups. At the same time, it's a great way for the client to really cut through the noise and see the technology in action. And we're now quite global. So we're operating studios in India, in South America, and in various regions in the United States. So the model is very much similar to what we're trying to do in Propel. And so we're trying to source and validate great technologies. We're looking at places that are commercially validated to some degree, but also ones that can go in the other direction. You're getting some good traction in defense. Can we get you out into the commercial market? We believe in this feedback loop that can happen in the US. We don't think commercial activity and defense activity should be in a silo when it comes to technology development, right? And so, but ultimately we're trying to solve DoD challenges. So a lot of the work with DecisionPoint and the team is reaching out to different defense customers through AFRL and others to understand what are the problem spaces we should be pursuing and what platforms do we have in the portfolio to apply to that. And the most important thing is really transition to procurement, right? So we want to get out of the grant mechanisms and into these procurement mechanisms that really allow these technologies to proliferate through defense. They're not just bespoke solutions, it's something that the DoD can use every day. So just a quick summary of where we've been. We started with, we've done a variety of services in the studio. So DecisionPoint delivers an incredible curriculum that Tommy can talk more about. It is essential to understand what they know about how you manage and navigate through the defense. They've all served as well, so they understand needs and they understand how to navigate in the government world. So it's a perfect combination for partnership with startups. We had a great midpoint roundtable event where we engaged certain DoD customers or defense customers or similar with startups in one-on-one facility discussions. So let's get to the brass tacks about this. How do I get your sensor into this environment? How do I get data sets into your hands that you can test? And so to really understand how we can create some stickiness between the two sides. And then ultimately trying to execute pilots that are ongoing, okay? So some are finished and some are just starting. But this is the thing we want to get to, is ultimately showing evidence that this is something that you should be looking at. And so that's the program. I'm sure there's plenty more to talk about today, but I first want to invite up John Rivnak from NSIN to talk more about. Thank you.
All right, thanks Satish. Good morning, welcome. It's exciting to be here, it's a pleasure. My name is John Rivnak. I am a program manager at National Security Innovation Network, or NSIN. NSIN is a DoD program office that reports to the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. Our mission is to build networks of innovators and problem solvers to generate new solutions to critical national security challenges. So we're super excited about this event and to be here with you all today. The way that NSIN executes on its mission is that it's built on two distinct but intertwined functional teams. We have our, let me make sure I'm progressing here. We have our regional network team, which is dispersed across the US, and we also have our program teams, which focus on developing and delivering programs to help support those ecosystems represented by our regional network teams. So across the US, our regional teams are comprised of 11 hubs that act as the center of gravity for their respective region. And then within those hubs, we have spokes that focus on developing their local ecosystems, typically through partnerships with universities and academic institutions. And right now, we have close to 20 partnerships with universities across the US. And the regional teams are critical, one, to act as liaisons between their local ecosystems and DoD and bridging that connection, but then also really understanding the needs of their ecosystems and then activating the program teams to help fill those needs through the delivery of our programs. So NSIN offers 3 portfolios of programs to support our regional teams. We've got our national national service portfolio, which focuses on creating pathways to inject new talent into the DoD. We have a collaboration portfolio that focuses on integrating new communities of problem solvers through collision events. And then we have our acceleration portfolio, which focuses on developing and accelerating dual-use ventures to solve national security challenges. So that's where Propel fits in. It falls under our acceleration portfolio. Propel really focuses on accelerating the ability of early-stage dual-use ventures to transition their solutions into the Department of Defense. Most Propel programs are 3 to 4 month-long programs with cohorts of about 10 to 12 early-stage ventures. What we really focus on is helping to facilitate customer discovery and mentorship and DoD-specific curriculum and education, but then really building really strong partnerships between the early stage ventures from the cohort and our DoD partners. For this particular Propel, we had a great relationship with AFRL Rome and the Information Directorate. So that's what we try to do, is we try to bring those partners together to really help drive solution adoption and solving of national security challenges. I won't talk too much about Python because you'll be hearing from Dexter Ong, the founder of the company, here in a little bit, but they are an alumni company from Propel. They participated in our 2019 Mass Challenge program, where we partnered with PEO Digital and C3INN from Hanscom Air Force Base. So really great success story, an example of a strong company coming out of a Propel program. Just a general overview of Propel Impact. So over 2019 and 2020, we ran 4 programs with about 40 early stage ventures, and those companies were able to generate over 90 solution adoptions, totaling almost 40 million in DoD awards and contracts. So what we really focused on this year was scaling up that support, running more programs, working with more companies. So far this year, we've run 7 iterations of the Propel program, and we've engaged about 70 early stage ventures through each of those. And you'll be hearing from 11 of those early stage ventures today. So thank you. My ask of all of you is to stay engaged with the community, stay engaged with NSIN. Our goal is to bring all of us together for these types of events so that we can solve those critical national security challenges. So please continue to be involved and engaged. I don't think I have my email here on the slide, but I'll be here all day, so please come and reach out if you're interested in learning more. So thank you to Decisive Point and New Lab and AFRL for the really strong partnership. Appreciate it. And I think we've got Tommy next up. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, John. All right, thanks everyone for coming. For us, it's an important reminder that today isn't the culmination of this program. This is the halfway point, right? We've gone through the process of working with companies, educating them on how to work and how to transition within the Department of Defense into larger programs. And now it's time to execute on those pilots and those programs and continue to receive support from both Decisive Point, NSIN, and New Lab over the next 6 to 12 months to continue to grow and scale within government and defense. So a little bit about Decisive Point, and first, when we came into this program, we had a different vision than perhaps some of the other programs that had existed within NSIN's portfolio. We wanted to be very focused on transition, and for us, there was no better partner than New Lab. One, we're a massive supporter of New York City, big believer that this is a great place to start your company and to scale and grow. But really that New Lab and their studio model is an ideal platform for us to work in and amongst with companies that both have hardware and software that need to scale within DoD, but also to establish those partnerships with different DoD programs. That's by nature their model, and we couldn't have asked for better partners than Satish and Shayna, Sahil, Brianna, and Cody on their team. So guys, thank you very much for all your partnership. We couldn't have done this without you.
Same goes for the NSIN team, John Rivnak, Dan Madden, Pete LaMonica, all the folks at AFRL that gave their time, which is very precious to these companies, to us, to help us understand their problems and try and solve them. As far as Decisive Point's role here, what we really wanted to do was take the time up front to help these companies understand how to navigate the challenges, not just of entering the federal market, but of taking the next step and scaling within DoD. There are certain programmatic things that happen within government contracting that are not similar to elsewhere within the commercial markets. So we approach that problem set directly by building first a curriculum and then having one-on-ones with these companies every week. And for the companies that are here and participating, again, thank you for your time, putting forward the effort. It's not a small commitment to do a program like this, but hopefully on the back end, you'll see the value and the growth that comes out of it. Kind of Decisive Point by the numbers, we're an investment and advisory firm. We focus on helping companies approach the federal market, understanding acquisitions, and then we invest in those companies that we think are primed to scale as they make that transition out of R&D into procurement. So it's a great model for partnership. We're mission driven. We believe first and foremost that America's national security is worth investing in, both our time and our effort. Over the last 3.5 years, we've grown from working with a small handful of companies to a large portfolio of advisory clients, an investment portfolio, and our first fund, which launched last year. This program is an amazing complement to the work that we were already doing and that we continue to do with the companies that we work here and also the companies that we invest in along the way. So, the show here is really about the companies. We want you guys to hear from the companies. We want you to hear about what they're doing. But first, we have the amazing opportunity to hear from Lieutenant General Retired Nagata, who is going to provide some insight through a pre-recorded message that we did yesterday. And really the focus of what we asked him to speak about was the challenge as we see them emerge over the next few years. There's been a huge pivot towards near-peer, great power conflict problem solving for the DoD, trying to find that next technology that's going to increase our technical overmatch over our adversaries that are also pursuing very technical major weapon system platform type threats against the United States. But we've seen just in the last month and a half that the counterterrorism threat isn't going away either. And the answer really is that we have to do both. And the digital terrain is going to be where the next set of battles are fought. Unlike 9/11 20 years ago, where there was really only one attack surface that our enemies could come and pursue us, today there's many. There's the cyber domain, there's our infrastructure, and then there's also kinetic means. So as we think about pursuing new technologies, we have to be ready to answer the call on both the state-on-state conflict threats and then also in the counterterrorism domain. So I'll give you a quick background and bio on General Nagata before we start him off. Lieutenant General Retired Michael K. Nagata is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. Previously, he served as the director of Strategic Operational Planning at the National Counterterrorism Center, and he was the commander of Special Operations Command Central, SOCCENT. Throughout his career, he served in various positions within Army Special Forces and Special Mission Units as a troop commander, operations officer, squadron commander, and Special Missions Unit commander. After graduating from the Naval War College, Lieutenant General Nagata served in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. He served within the intelligence community as the Deputy Director of Counterterrorism, and as a general officer, he serves as Deputy Chief, Office of Defense Representation for Pakistan, and the Deputy Director of Special Operations and Counterterrorism, and the Joint Staff as the Commander of SOCCENT. To translate all those acronyms, General Nagata has been involved in pretty much every significant counterterrorism effort of the United States over the last 20 years. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our talented AV team, and they'll put General Nagata up on the screen for us.
Good day, everyone. My name is Michael Nagata. I today live in Arlington, Virginia, but I am a retired Special Forces Lieutenant General who spent 38 years of his life on active duty with the U.S. military, and I retired in 2019. My final position in government was the Director of Strategy for the National Counterterrorism Center here in Washington, D.C. It's a pleasure to be among you today, and hopefully at least some of my prepared remarks today will be of some value or utility to you as you pursue your various interests and work into the future. My goal today is to spend 15 to 20 minutes providing my perspective on national security needs for the United States, both today and into the foreseeable future. Of course, since I am no longer in government, I cannot speak about classified information or have no classified insights anymore. But I did do multiple operational and policy assignments around the world, including 4 assignments in the Washington, D.C. area, including my final position, which I've already mentioned at NCTC. To recap my policy and strategic experiences in Washington, D.C., I once served as a policy officer in the Office of the Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon. I was also the J-37, or the Director for Counterterrorism and Special Operations on the Joint Staff in the Pentagon. I did 2 tours in the intelligence community. One I've already mentioned at NCTC. I was also detailed to the agency's Counterterrorism Center in Langley, Virginia for a year back in 2008 to 2009. All of these were strategy and policy jobs. For complete transparency, what I do today as a private citizen is I'm a distinguished senior fellow for the Middle East Institute, a think tank in Washington, D.C., and I do a range of public speaking and benevolent work activity from the Washington, D.C. area. Much of the work that I do these days involves helping people that either still work within the United States government or provide support to the United States government in doing something that, at the risk of mangling the famous hockey star Wayne Gretzky's famous quote, basically involves helping people understand that while it is important to skate to wherever the national security puck may be today, it's far more important to be able to skate to where the national security puck is going to be. Now, let me start with a warning before I get into the substance of this. Often, the United States government is not particularly reliable or even energetic in skating to where the puck is going to be. Instead, what the United States government, and often the United States military itself, hyper-focuses on are exclusively today's needs, today's problems, and today's requirements. However, rather unsurprisingly, the price that the United States government, including the military, often pays for just focusing on today's needs is we're not prepared for what tomorrow will bring us, whether they be threats, risks, or challenges. The reason that it is so hard to invest in the future is because the future can be so unpredictable. There's a very high likelihood anyone who tries to guess what the future will bring will be wrong, at least on occasion. And nothing is more unwelcome in government service than having to admit you were wrong. But the problem with not doing so is if you're unwilling to take those risks, you won't be ready for what is coming at you from over the horizon. In American military history, in fact, United States history is replete with various times and various places over the course of our existence where we have been strategically surprised by something. A very good example that all of us lived through not that long ago, 20 years ago, in fact, was the strategic surprise of 9/11. But there have been others. There were others before that event. There certainly have been others since that event. Now, my goal for the remaining time is not to provoke you, but I do intend to be at least a little provocative, at least provocative enough that it hopefully helps you consider, think about, and prepare for what I personally consider to be the rapidly growing and decisive importance of the technologies and capabilities that are emerging all over the world, not just in the United States, that are connected to or exist completely within the electromagnetic spectrum, or EMS since we have a penchant for turning everything into an acronym here in Washington, D.C., the EMS as the strategically vital national security arena for the rest of our lives, I would argue for at least the next generation, that I personally believe is where the most decisive challenges, decisions, and actions the United States faces will be for not only our lifetimes, but our children's, our grandchildren's, and their own children's future. Now, one of the most common characterizations that I heard before I retired in 2019, and I still hear today as a private citizen in the arena called Washington, D.C., is this notion or this formulation that because great power competition, essentially our contest with near-peer adversaries such as Russia, China, Iran, or North Korea, have become so important, so vital, and perhaps even so existential that we must therefore do less of what we have been doing for the last 20 years. More specifically, we need to do less counterterrorism so that we can do more in the arena of great power competition. It is a common formulation. It is a popular formulation. That formulation has been driving many of the strategic choices the United States has been making for several years now, at least as far back as the 2008 National Security Strategy and thereby the National Defense Strategy that flowed from that document. But here's my view. The problem with that formulation, that in order to do more about great power competition, we must do less about counterterrorism. The problem is it's fundamentally wrong. In fact, it is a formulation that I personally believe we are already having reason to regret, and we inevitably are going to be forced to change course. Here's another way of saying what I just said. Instead of a world where we get to choose what we do more of, and therefore what we must do less of, essentially treating national security as if it is a zero-sum game, here's what we're actually going to have to do, said in a very pedestrian way. The United States government is going to have to learn to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Terrorism is not going away. In fact, as the director of strategy at the National Counterterrorism Center for 3 years, I reported privately and I stated publicly on many occasions that the problem of terrorism around the world in all its various forms, whether domestic, international, what have you, continues to get worse. There are more terrorists today around the world, including inside our own country, than there were on 9/11. So the idea where we get to decide to do less when it comes to counterterrorism will be brought up short by the simple fact that terrorists will not let you ignore them. But that doesn't mean we can afford to do less when it comes to great power competition. Clearly, the strategic challenge we face from near-peer adversaries demands more and more of our attention. But the inconvenient truth is that the United States government is going to have to do both. It would be very convenient to be able to do less CT so that we can do more GPC. The world is not going to let us get away with that. We will have to do both. Now, before continuing, I want to mention something that is also hampering, at least in my own view, the ability of the United States to make progress in at least one of those two areas, and that's the area of great power competition. I was told recently by some former government colleagues that we may be changing that term. I don't know what we're going to use as a replacement for great power competition, but regardless, whether we call it great power competition or anything else, the problem that I believe that has afflicted the strategic thinking of the United States government since well before I retired, and I still see afflicting our strategic thinking today, is that everyone tends to use the same term, whether it's great power competition or whatever the new formulation may be, but almost nobody means precisely the same thing. Let me say this a little differently. Even though I retired 2 years ago, I am pretty confident. Matter of fact, I'd be willing to certainly bet beer money on this notion that if I drove across the river from my very nice townhouse in Arlington back into the Beltway, and I found 12 of my former policy level colleagues at random, handed them all a blank sheet of paper and a pen, and asked them, please write down your definition of great power competition. Assuming they were willing to do so, I am very confident that I would get 12 different responses. Some of them would be more or less different than the others, but all of them would be different to some degree. That is a cognitive disability that the United States has suffered from for many years now and continues to suffer from. We all think we're trying to solve the same problem, but the fact is, to one degree or another, all the various organs, agencies, and elements of the US government are all trying to solve a somewhat different problem. And said rather oversimply, but I think there's a fundamental truth to this, we cannot hope to solve this problem unless someday we come to a common consensus definition of what problem we are actually trying to solve. Because depending on whether you look at this from the State Department point of view, the Pentagon point of view, the intelligence community point of view, the law enforcement point of view, the USAID point of view, it really doesn't matter which agency I name. All of them have a slightly or largely different perspective on what we mean by the term great power competition. That is a direct strategic obstacle to us being operationally or strategically effective against the problem, because to one degree or another, we all think we're solving the same problem, but in fact, we're all working on different problems. This is a solvable problem, but in my judgment, the United States government is not yet making sufficient progress towards achieving a common, consistent, consensus definition of what problem we are actually trying to solve when it comes to great power competition. Now, before continuing on, I want to give you my personal opinion about what I think the words great power competition should be defined as. Here's my answer. Great power competition is essentially a global, strategic contest, and in some areas, a conflict over American influence. In my judgment, ever since the end of World War II, Americans' fortune and prosperity and security have not primarily flowed from our military might or our economic strength, as important as both of them have been. In my view, the single most important facet of American power since the end of World War II has been American influence. And that influence flowed from our unmatched military power and economic vitality. But fundamentally, our power has been the power of influence. Our ability to persuade, our ability to convince, our ability to get allies, partners, or other actors around the world to do things or stop doing things they would otherwise not choose to, but they chose to because we influenced them to do so. I would argue that since the end of World War II, the most influential nation on earth has been the United States. But in recent years, we have been hemorrhaging influence. Now, the good news for us is our influence was so high after the end of World War II, because we chose basically to rebuild much of a shattered world on our own dime and at our own expense for a generation after that conflict was over. And that won us unprecedented influence around the world. But for a variety of reasons I won't bother to go into in this particular set of remarks, we have been making choices that have been putting our influence around the world at risk, or at least vulnerable to other predators who had ways of undermining our influence. And so what I see happening around the world, and have been seeing now for many years, is a gradual but sustained loss of our strategic influence around the world. And when I watch what our near-peer adversaries are doing, I would characterize that the most dangerous and the most frequent thing they do is they continue to attack our influence globally because they already know that our influence is eroding, and they wish to capitalize on that weakness in every way they can. So that's my definition of great power competition. But let me move to perhaps the single most important point I wanted to make during this presentation. And it gets back to this notion, in my view, a mistaken notion, that the United States has the luxury of being able to decide that it can do less of counterterrorism so that it can do more of great power competition. Aside from what I've already said, and that is that terrorists will not let us ignore them, there is another stark reality here that I think too many, both inside in government and outside of government, do not yet fully grasp. And that is the sad, but ultimately rather predictable reality that many aspects of what we today call great power competition and what for the last 20 years we have called counterterrorism, they are converging. These are not two different planets whose orbits will never touch each other. In fact, these two planets are beginning to merge into each other in ways that are both incredibly dangerous and strategically important for the United States to grasp, to realize, and to base its decisions on. Let me give you some examples of what I mean by this. One place where there has been a very significant convergence between terrorist activities and the activities of one of our near-peer adversaries is in the country of Yemen. The Houthis, that most of you know, a few years ago were a remote, not particularly well-known northern tribe in that desert country. Today are proxies of the Iranian state. This non-state actor, who do meet, by the way, the classic definition of terrorists in that they use acts of violence to cause political change because they wish to hold power in Yemen and own half the country now. What are they capable of today? They are capable of short-range, surface-to-surface, accurate ballistic missile strikes. They are capable of increasingly autonomous, long-range, swarm drone attack on Gulf states that are antagonistic to them, such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And they are capable of effectively employing precision-guided anti-ship cruise missiles into the straits off the Yemeni coast to threaten both military and commercial shipping. These are terrorists using first world technologies provided to them by a nation state actor, and that nation state actor, Iran, is part of what we are today calling our near peer adversaries. Let me give you another example. Russian ethnic separatists in the Ukraine that several years ago demonstrated their ability to employ first world military and cyber technologies that effectively prevented much of the West, including the United States, from taking effective action against them. Not that Putin was able to accomplish everything he wanted to in the Ukraine, he did not. But these Russian ethnic separatists that also, by the way, in my view, meet the definition of terrorists. These were non-state actors who recognize no legitimate government, who are using violence to accomplish their own political goals that happen to be consistent with Russian strategic desires. That is, by definition, terrorism, using violence to cause political change, but they were using first world military and cyber technologies. Where did they get that from? They got them from the nation state of Russia, who is one of our near peer adversaries. Ladies and gentlemen, I could go on, but the amount of convergence that I believe we are now seeing between terrorists or non-state actors as useful proxies for nation states that are engaging in proxy warfare for the same reason nations have always engaged in proxy warfare. It's very convenient to have someone else do your fighting, your bleeding, and your dying for you, has created this reality where the idea that counterterrorism and great power competition are things we can decide to do less of on the one hand so we can do more on the other hand is being completely confounded by the fact that great power competition and counterterrorism requirements are becoming the same problem. The trends I've just described in Yemen and Russia are happening globally as barriers to entry for increasingly powerful technology fall everywhere, so that literally anyone in the world that wants to have a strategically powerful capability, well, that you can buy with a credit card, or you can get under the dark web and use some form of cryptocurrency to purchase and procure. This is the reality the world now faces, and it is the reality the United States faces. We no longer have the luxury of putting great power competition in one bin and counterterrorism another bin. We can try, we will end up regretting it because, number one, counterterrorism will not be ignored, terrorists will not be ignored, but much more importantly, they're becoming the same problem. Now, I know this has been very uplifting. My goal today was not to depress you. My goal was certainly not to persuade you that I'm engaging in flights of fantasy here. I think everything I've just told you is well grounded, well documented, and obvious if we are willing to see it. I also believe this is the reality that the United States government, including the Department of Defense and intelligence community and all its other agencies, are ultimately going to be forced to confront, whether they realize it or not. Of course, as a retiree, I get to wax eloquent on any particular thing I want to these days, including perhaps engage in flights of fantasy that some of you may think I've engaged on in my prepared remarks today. But regardless, hopefully at least a few things I have said today will be of some use to you and all of you as you pursue your discussions for the rest of this event. Thank you for listening to me. It was a pleasure and an honor to get a chance to tell you my views on these topics, and good luck to all of you. Thank you.
So one of the reasons that General Nagata is such a great speaker on topics like this is that convergence he's talking about really plays out in our pursuit of commercial technologies for national security. Right? At the same time as the government wants more commercial technologies to come to the government, by their nature, those same technologies are going to be continually more accessible to our enemies, both at the state level and also non-state actors. So, with that, I think we're going to transition now to having Dexter come up and talk a little bit about his journey as a early stage founder, leveraging a program like NSIN Propel previously. And I'll give you his brief bio, and then I'll have him come up here and talk about what they're doing at Pyson. But Dexter Ang is the chairman and co-founder of Pyson. He's responsible for OEM partnerships, investor relations, and business development, as well as consumer electronics and military clients. Ang is an SME for Human Factors and the Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance. Drawing on his experience in HCI and mechanical engineering, Ang led Pyson's development of its patented nerve-sensing ENG technology and integration for disruptive capabilities. Prior to founding Pyson, Ang worked as a senior trader specializing in signal processing for low-latency communications at Jump Trading, a market leader in high-frequency trading. So, Dexter, come on up. We're happy to have you, and thanks for sharing your time and your story with us.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, NSIN, for this opportunity. And so Pyson, as an example of a company that is building technologies originally for a consumer and commercial use case, has then found a lot of interest and demand in the DoD. And so I'm going to talk about what we do in this space, as well as a little bit about our journey, a little bit of the ups and downs, and some things that might be revealing or may not be revealing about the challenges about operating as a startup in this space. Next slide. I'll do it. Great. So we're creating neural interface gesture control at Python. My role is I started the company 5 years ago with my co-founder, David. I'm now the chairman of the board, as well as frontline on business development. So here's, actually, start with this video. So that is a public video about our technology. A lot of those concepts we've already created early prototypes for. Some of those we'll be deploying to warfighters first, as well as adapting to the commercial markets. And so let's go back to the origins of Python. We build hard tech for hard populations. So on the picture on the left, that's of course myself and Bobby Forrester, a person affected by ALS. That is the original mission and problem set that we saw at Python that was unsolved and still is unsolved in the world, being able to capture nerve signals on a person who physically can't move and still allow them an ability to control computers. And so we developed and patented that technology. Originally, we were funded by MIT when we started as a small company then. I had worked in industry for 8 years and had gone back to MIT as a graduate student. And then when we created the company, we immediately saw there was commercial use case for our technology. We had investors from Bose. We have customers in the commercial space. And then ultimately, though, the users who demanded our technology today for use cases like autonomy and other use cases were the special forces and larger military. And we've decided to intentionally focus our first products on this market because there is a lot more applicability for our technology add value to save people's lives, and also can help us as a hard tech company be able to invest in the time and resources needed to bring our technology to a larger sort of commercialization. So some of our traction in the DoD space and some of it otherwise is that we are one of the 21 companies that the Air Force selected last year for their Big Bet Strategic Cyber contract. It marries customer demand with cyber matching dollars that greatly accelerate the development of our technology and also puts us on 2 programs of record with the Air Force. We were a very fortunate and grateful participant in the Mass Challenge NSIN program, and specifically what that benefited of us was exposure to PEO Digital at Hanscom. It was exposure to Natick Research Center for the Army, and that actually spun out into a lot of our traction as well. We now have requirements for Air Force, DITRA, and Army, ultimately representing a lot of dismounted operators. And then we already have early integration work with customers like Google, Microsoft, Mitsubishi. Our work with Google is extending into a 3rd contract. And so that's still going to take 3 or 4 years prior to a commercial release of our technology, but we are incubating it heavily with our dual purpose customers. We also are staying as much as possible investing in our ALS mission by doing work with the ALS Association, and we are a VC-backed company. So some of our engagements are listed here, and we've basically been very, very user-focused with our gesture control technology across the different services, and also working with the program offices, which are important for small companies to recognize because they own the POM and they own the large budgets for multi-year acquisitions, and then S&T customers who can help you with R&D. And so there has to be a dual-purpose strategy, which is actually very hard to navigate for a small company. This is what our technology looks like right now, which is a wearable on the wrist that senses nerve sensing for finger movements as well as wrist movements with a gyroscope and IMU. And our SDK, we're primarily ultimately going to be a software company, allowing our gestures to produce machine-readable code that can be consumed by any application. And so this is how we'll be integrating our technology into some of the Army systems, seen below, night vision, as well as aerial robots, as well as ground robots. And so a couple things I want to talk about here is that our tech, which is a sensor on the wrist or anywhere on the body, but primarily on the wrist to sense finger movements, this general infrastructure can be applied to anything, and we're really just connecting to a phone, and the phone can, as you've seen in the video, connect to a smart home, as well as any sort of other applications. And it's just the application, specific application for a specific customer that differentiates our technology. I'll now go into a couple things that are, I want to discuss the concepts of what I've seen as a small business. And ultimately, when we're talking about innovation and we're talking about acquisition processes, we're talking about bureaucracy, we're even talking about, General Nagata is talking about unalignment in terms of what is a term like great power competition. A lot of this is solved, perhaps all of it is solved with speed. The OODA loop, right? And if any of you guys understand where, like, for example, Elon Musk's general philosophy about technology is just move faster. Move faster at all costs, and that solves it. If you run into problems, that's to be expected. You either run into them slower or you run into them faster and solve them. And so I want to give a couple examples of that. This slide is the way I think about it since I've started doing work in the DoD industry. And then again, I did not have this background until 3 years ago when we first started having customers in this space. The national security problem, I believe, is summed up pretty clearly in that first statement, which is that China graduates nearly double the STEM PhDs in the US. We're a much richer country, we have more universities, and yet we are being out-graduated in the technical fields. And technology is everything. And so our #1 champion in Air Force at AFSOC, he says technology advances like dog years. A year is forever for the warfighter. And so a year can pass by in a blink of an eye in contracting or the POM cycle or getting through a proposal, but a year is everything to a warfighter, and we have to be thinking about the end result of technology innovation, which is how do we get something into the hands of a warfighter who will be able to use it and benefit and perhaps preserve their situational awareness or their survivability. So therefore, the problem is really just speed, but the amplification of speed is scale. And my last slide is, for example, I'll tell you specifically about something that we've gone through is here's a case study of 2 of our contracts, one which was extremely fast and extremely beneficial for Python, and one that was very challenging for us to deal with. #1, the AFWorks open topic process that, of course, NSIN was actually co-located with AFWorks. We're extremely benefited by the engagements with them. They had, in 2018 and 19, the open process. And so we came in 2019, we had a phase 1, a phase 2. Our SOCOM customer told us they were interested in supporting us on a phase 2 in May of 19. We submitted it a month later. We had the contract 2 months later. 3 months from a customer saying they have the money and then going through the entire process to the real paper. That is still to date the fastest I've ever seen it. And that set my understanding of what was normal in DoD. It was very much the opposite. And then I didn't know at the time was that we just happened to be a beneficiary of this innovation ecosystem. But because of that, in those 2 months, I hired 8 employees. We're now 45 people. Obviously, these are MIT, PhDs, other sort of like high-end engineers. I had to have the confidence and the financial backing and the traction to be able to do this. And then we ultimately won the StratFi contract off of this in Air Force with AFSOC that now puts us directly to integrate into 2 programs of record. Again, within less than 1 year of that first contract being initiated. And then in comparison, a contract at another service was off-cycle phase 2. We met the customer, they said they want to give us funding, and then a year and a half until we had paper. And it's not that a year and a half is a big deal. A year and a half is a huge deal because you're making hiring decisions, wrong hiring decisions during this time. Project changes, technology changes. Ultimately, what we're executing on is the year-and-a-half old technology concepts that the customer had. And we all know what happens when you do that. You're just totally left behind. The infrastructure is different. So I wanted to just describe those particular examples because it's very real when a startup benefits or is hampered by innovation and ultimately leads up to that national security problem of speed because we have all the other near-peer countries which don't worry about the speed of contracting. They will just throw things around because they don't have the same sort of fiduciary duties to taxpayers. So it's important that the US just increases the velocity to help startups do this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dexter. So we're going to get started with our startup presentations now. There's 11 companies from our cohort this year. Before I introduce our first startup, I just wanted to remind the audience again that we'll be taking questions, so eager for engagement. And for those that are online, please feel free to submit questions at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So next, I'd like to start with Brian Chan from Zona Space Systems. Thanks so much.
All right, hello and good morning. My name is Brian Chan, and I represent Zona Space Systems. I'm a co-founder and director of business development. So here at Zona, we are developing the next generation position, navigation, and timing service enabled by a constellation of low Earth orbiting satellites. PNT is an umbrella term used for systems such as GPS. I, for one, use GPS to navigate here today. It's great, obviously, everyone uses it, but there are certain environments where it's challenging to use, especially those environments experienced by the warfighter. And so our system, Pulsar, aims to respond to some of these challenges. And so some of the key features of our constellation include it's a global system, so its ability to operate GPS independently everywhere. The signals are very resilient, but just by nature of closer satellites, the signals are about 1,000 times more powerful than GPS. It's also dual band. An added layer of security for really all users, including civil users, to combat kind of cybersecurity, as well as precision. So we get out of the box 10 centimeter level position accuracy. And I'll talk a little bit about the pilot in a few slides. Speaking of technology applications, so really anything that requires high performance position, navigation, and time, which encompasses a lot of things. So for example, in the commercial field, critical infrastructure, things like power utilities, telecom require precision timing. Oftentimes they require alternatives to GPS, which sometimes don't exist. So we intend to respond to those needs. Intelligent transportation systems, so things, vehicles that move around that are removing now humans out of the loop, require basically better sensors, right? And in our case, it's better navigation sensors that we are providing to offload some of the requirements on the vehicle itself. And smartphones and IoT devices, right? If I try to use Google Maps right here, inside, we're not going to get good signal reception. Same is true, under tree cover, urban canyons, things of that nature. And then from a defense perspective, really it's all about resilience and resilient positioning for end users across all domains, including land, sea, air, and even space. And so I've outlined a few examples there. As far as DoD customers, so we have several engagements with some customers. So for example, DARPA Blackjack, we are actually developing the firmware to enable PNT on their LEO satellites. National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, they manage the GPS ground segment, and so we were accepted into the inaugural Startup Accelerator earlier this year. Great to get some lessons learned and feedback there. And we are working on a Navy SBIR regarding signals of opportunity for navigation. Really for a potential DoD interest, again, it kind of spans the space in terms of applications requiring high performance alternative navigation. I just outlined several agencies that we've had really good initial chats with and are continuing to move further on, and of course open to more in the future. So our demonstration, this happened last month for the NSIN Propel program. So what we did was basically test our concept on the ground. And so what that looks like is essentially we had several ground beacons. You can see that in the top photo there, transmitting our PNT signals to a user. In this case, it was a truck moving around and getting a position fix. And so this was out by Camp Roberts, close to Paso Robles, with the Naval Postgraduate School. So some of the results that we see here. So on the top is a kind of a bird's eye view of the test. So we demonstrated that we were able to transmit our own signals, our own PNT signals in waveform. The user on the ground, in this case the truck, demonstrated that yes, we could track and receive the signal and produce PNT solution, and the end user obtained about a 15 centimeter accuracy without GPS. Right, this is a zona only signal, which for reference is several times more accurate than a GPS only solution, which gets you about 1 to 5 meters. As for next steps, we're developing a higher fidelity user equipment to really drive that position accuracy further down even more to the decimeter level. We're testing this performance in a GPS jammed environment. We plan on doing so next year, and ultimately, we're going to be transmitting in space, right? And so that's the ultimate demonstration, which is happening next year. This is my final slide here. Good segue. So we just announced this week a seed round raise of $10 million, which is a pretty big deal for us. What that does is basically fund a launching of the 2 demonstration satellites starting in June of next year. And what that will do is we're essentially transmitting our own signals from space to end users to pick that up globally. And kind of looking a little bit further ahead, so phase 1 of the Pulsar rollout schedule is essentially 36 small satellites in low Earth orbit that provides service for folks in the mid-latitudes, essentially precision timing, GPS corrections, as well as some amount of position service. And basically, as you build out the constellation, the more service and more accuracies can be provided to the end user. So eventually global coverage, eventually complete independence from GPS, and these tight position accuracies that I mentioned. The next funding round will effectively finance the phase 1 deployment, and we are currently working right now to partner with your kind of heritage GPS receiver manufacturers to basically integrate our technology into their equipment. So folks like DoD or even ourselves, if you buy the next iPhone, the idea is that it will already be integrated with the Zona technology, offering the kind of performance features that I'm talking about today. U.S. government, obviously represents a really large early R&D technology partner. It's been really great for us engaging with them, and we hope to continue that relationship moving forward. So again, my name is Brian Chan, Zona Space Systems. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Just wanted to offer up any questions in the room for Brian at Zona. I'll kick it off with one, Brian. I'd love to hear a little bit about Zona Space Systems' IP strategy, competition in this space, and how you guys are kind of working with existing partners that are out there, and especially in relation to your rollout.
Sure. So I guess there aren't too many people in the navigation environment, I'll say, and so a lot of our CTO came from Stanford GPS Laboratory, as did several others, which is where GPS actually was originally founded. So we, I believe, have some walking IP in the people we are employing, which is great. We filed patents early on, and this was a really big deal for us. And honestly, even transmitting signals from space is a big one from a regulatory standpoint, and so that's something that we've been working on as well, and been working on since day one, really. So I would say it's a number of things, but yeah, that I think covers the highlights.
Thanks a lot.
Hey Brian, so cool. Can you help me understand what's insecure about GPS today?
Sure. So the GPS signals for folks that are using it on our phones today is an open signal, meaning there is no encryption, no security on top of that. So it's very easy to, for one, jam, but ultimately to spoof. And so there's been a couple years ago now, there's a company that basically showcased you can spoof a Tesla truck.
For those who are not, I don't know what spoofing is.
Yeah,
What's
sure.
spoofing?
Yeah, so spoofing is basically faking a signal to pretend that you are where you're actually not. So a company spoofed or faked a Tesla vehicle saying, hey, we're actually over here, but in reality, we're over here. And so you can actually, because through these autonomous systems, it's very dangerous, right? If you can imagine, if you have a vehicle, an autonomous vehicle with people in it, and say, oh, we're actually over here, you can navigate, say, towards hitting a wall, and that's not something that we want. And right now, GPS is is completely open to that. And so we are really offering another layer of security on top of this navigation.
Thanks a lot. Next, I'd like to introduce Dan Noby from Matrix Space.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here today. I want to say thank you to everyone in attendance in person and also online for giving us time from your day to listen to our presentations and stories. I am Dan Noby, VP of RF and Radar Systems for Matrix Space. Matrix Space is a full-stack autonomy service provider, and we're focused and specializing on drones, and more specifically, drone swarms. Our core competencies help us in this area, core competencies in AI and automation, but also in sensors, sensor fusion, radar, and communications. In a drone swarm scenario, there are a couple of key steps. One is the sensing piece, one is decision making, and then one is the actuation process. And sensor fusion rolls into the first step. Communications is critical in the second step. And then we get into the autonomy and AI pieces as the decisions are rolled out and actuation takes place. And so Matrix Space has worked on one of the key missing links in an effective drone swarm is the communication piece. And Matrix Space has been working on communications for long-range, high-speed communications. So today I'm going to talk a bit about some of the things we piloted. One of the things we piloted is we've actually demonstrated a 50x improvement in range over conventional drone communication systems, which is quite a big deal. And we also have piloted in this cohort period of activity radar operation as well. So the team on the left side, the images are Greg and Jose, the two founders, CEO and senior technical advisor. On the right side, you see a lower right, Matt Kling, who's here today. He's the VP of Autonomous Systems, and I'm the VP of the RF and Radar Systems. So I'd like to talk a bit more about the RF and radar portions of our activity. We call this Doppler space. Doppler space is a dual mode, high-speed communications and radar system that's swap-C compatible with the drone. Key elements of this are, number one, the same hardware. We're using the same hardware to do both communications functions, mesh communications at millimeter wave frequencies, and radar operation. So we're able to develop a system that is size, weight, power, and most importantly, cost compatible with drones. And this provides some solutions that are really not available today in this space. So we all know that communication is critical data is critical in making good decisions, whether it's AI and artificial intelligence, machine learning, or in human interaction, data is critical. And so the communication is a key part of exchanging this information, especially in a drone swarm, where you have a mesh of drones that are all trying to communicate. They're sharing their multi-scopic views, different points of view, as well as multimodal or multi-sensor data. You have LiDAR, radar, IR, and so on. And you have a lot of data you're trying to share at very fast rates. And so communication is critical here. And then coupled under that, we add in the radar capabilities, which are important for navigation, as well as target identification and tracking. The navigation and all these features for the radar are critical because your drones may need to operate in fire, in a smoke environment, or fog, or nighttime, for example. So this slide shows a couple of features of the systems that we developed, largely based on millimeter wave ranges of operation and mesh communication. So the mesh offers advantages in resiliency and range extension and anti-jamming properties, and also the millimeter wave offers features in the area of, also we have range extension due to the focusing of the energy and high gain antennas, as well as the frequency spectrum is much less crowded than the conventional Wi-Fi bands. So Doppler space enables communications and radar. Technology applications for Doppler space and for our Matrix space products. First responders is the key area we're looking at for commercial modes of operation, and then on the defense side, it's more on base security. And there's a lot of similarities and sharing and dual use aspects between the technology applied to those different applications. DoD customers, oops, sorry, I went one too far. DoD customers, we are engaged in a phase 1 SBIR with the Air Force, and we are in a lot of discussions with Air Force on base security. They seem to be an early adopter of technology related to base security. And also the Department of Homeland Security is an agency we're working with quite a bit. So NSIN Propel demonstration. So we have a live demonstration of the communications network streaming videos. We've also demonstrated during this process radar operation. We've demonstrated drones doing autonomous functions like tracking and navigation. And also we've done communication mesh testing. So I'd like to share with you today some data that we've taken that's kind of illustrates the points that I've made and underscores the capabilities. And that is this idea of extended range. And this graph shows, on the x-axis, it shows the range, and on the y-axis is the jammer power, the amount of jammer or interference, just background noise that you can tolerate. So if you're in your living room at your house, you're very far on the left side of the graph. You're operating over maybe 10 meters of range, and you can tolerate a lot of noise from other Wi-Fi systems in the area. But if you want to communicate with a drone that's, say, half a kilometer away, you really can't tolerate very much interference. And so we have a 5 times improvement in range just based on our link budget. And then coupled with that, we observed that in a kind of low density office environment, the Wi-Fi system was particularly jammed by background users. And when you consider what the effective range was for the Wi-Fi system compared to what we could achieve with Doppler space, we achieved a 50 times improvement in the range just due to background interference. Furthermore, when you couple into it our phased array capabilities and our mesh properties, we can further improve our jamming resiliency. So what's next? We'll be integrating Doppler space into our drones and drone swarms, and we look to continue to work with the DoD customers as early adopters of this technology. So Doppler space provides revolutionary communication ranges and radar that will enable a new class of mobile products. Any questions?
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Dan. One of the virtual questions we got for you, Dan, was to maybe talk a little bit around the integration with 5G that we're seeing in the commercial application and how you see matrix space playing a role there.
Right, thank you. So yes, we have demonstrated 5G operation of our drones and control of the drones through the 5G networks. We view Doppler space as an extension of the 5G technology in a sense that we can do mesh operation and mesh hotspots as an example, but then our communication network ties into the cloud or through a gateway, for example, could be to a 5G network or to any sort of ground-based installation to give you your cloud access. So we view it as being kind of an extension of any system, for example, 5G.
Thanks a lot, Dan. For sake of time, we're going to keep moving forward here. I'd like to introduce Michael from Asalon to come up on stage next.
Hello. Okay. So first and foremost, bear with me as I'm a walk and talker, so this is going to be extremely challenging for me to sit still and talk at the same time. So hopefully I do not too much of a horrible job here. So my name is Michael Quiroga. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Asalon. And who is Asalon? Asalon is an American-made company that is endeavoring to automate security operations with robotics, advanced sensors, and AI. These capabilities are ensuring that remote operations are happening, and we're increasing safety. And we have over 15,000 missions completed to date, and we're empowering drones and robotics really for remote operations. What we're initially seeing is that drones or unmanned systems in general were really not unmanned at all. and they were requiring teams of teams essentially to utilize these assets. And so Asalon is really creating complete automation and empowering both commercial operators and the warfighters to leverage these technologies remotely. For our demo, we've partnered with Aloft to show how drone operations integrated with a UTM system really empower drone operations to be completely automated. So the team, we were predominantly based out of MIT. 3 co-founders came from the aerospace side. Damon, Adam, and Brent, good friends from MIT, and I came in initially as a consultant, and then ultimately came in to help commercialize these technologies. We've raised $6 million to date. Some of our key investors are the Decisive Point Fund, the Franklin Technology Partners as well. Technology applications. So on the commercial sector, we're automating perimeter security operations with drones, advanced sensors, and AI. What does that mean? So really there's 3 primary use cases that we have. Automated pre-programmed perimeter missions. So think a warfighter walking the fence line. We're automating that. Secondly, we're integrating with an ecosystem of legacy IoT systems. Think integration with a perimeter fence line. Typically now, warfighters, and even on the commercial side, requires a physical human to go out there and check that sensor. Really time-consuming. And so what we're trying to do on the commercial sector is leverage robotics for really the 3 main use cases: the dull, the dirty, and the dangerous. We've completed more than 15,000 automated drone missions. I would challenge any other company on the planet with regards to that many automated missions in the commercial sector. We have a 24/7 robotic security operations center based out of Philadelphia, and we're currently running missions to date for customers like Ford Motor Company, FedEx, and Dow Chemical, amongst just to name a few of our commercial customers. On the government side, we're part of the Air Force base modernization efforts. We were down selected as one of those companies from that initiative. We're one of the only companies on the planet that's actually deployed at an airport facility. We're partnered with the FAA as part of the Beyond program, as well as our customer FedEx Express, to really challenge the current FAA regulations and what the art of the possible is by utilizing automated aerial assets in a very congested environment. On the government sector, with the integrated drones, so one of our initiatives was to partner with AFWorks, and we won a phase 2 SBIR to integrate aerial assets and ground-based assets for complete automation. So existing traction that we have on the DoD side, so we were, again, down selected as one of the AFWorks Security Flight Line of the Future winners in terms of moving on to the next phase. We currently hold multiple SBIR phase 1 and a phase 2 with security forces up in Hanscom, and that is really to leverage automated perimeter patrol and autonomous alarm response to legacy systems. We also have an existing phase 2 SBIR with the Rapid Sustainment Office that was really the genesis of integrating aerial and ground robotics. We saw that there was an inherent weakness with aerial assets, and layering on security with aerial and ground assets is really the key feature for complete automation. So we submitted an SBIR, and we initially won that as well. We were part of a rodeo with Softworks back in 2017 that was called Thunder Drone, and through those initial efforts, we ended up partnering with Draper Labs, and subsequently we were on a subcontract to one of those contracts, one of their contracts, and we were have then been put through the ringer with our American-made aircraft that you see here, and we have received our Army Airworthiness Certificate back in 2018. Some future DoD interests that we have, obviously we were engaged with US SOCOM through that Thunder Drone initiative. So we are partnered or developing more relations with Army's Combat Capabilities Development and Army's Futures Command. So for our live demo, we actually pre-recorded a mission, but essentially what we tried to simulate was how our automated missions integrated with the ALOFT platform allowed us to show when there is a TFR, for example, or inclement weather, how integrated with an automated platform allows us to really show true autonomous operations through a remote command center. So here's a quick video of that integration. This is actually our GSOC. And this is our Drone IT software. And that's actually the utility that's deployed in that. Any type of IoT system that is autonomously become alive, obviously when it's downrange as well, leveraging automated robots, air and ground assets, commercial sector, we're automating physical behaviors, so we're automating observer support conditions on the network. So as you see, here for our came up, came off, when it came off, sent us our alert. Ultimately, this is where layering ground-based assets becomes extremely useful. So as aerial assets come back, this is where operators can then deploy ground-based assets autonomously based on what So what you're seeing now is on the battery and IC game, we have an autonomous arm that plugs into the battery. One kernel called us a hydrogen sensor, swapping out batteries. I'm out of time here, so hopefully I was able to rapid fire. So just some quick successes. You take two companies that have tremendous traction with the FAA and a tremendous amount of firsts. Again, we're part of the FAA Beyond program. We're the only company on the planet, to our knowledge, that has deployed an automated system at an airport and really endeavoring to challenge the next wave of regulations. And again, we're partnered with ALOFT, who was down selected for the Before You Fly app for the FAA. And so what's the future hold for us right now? So in the next few years, we will be scaling with our existing commercial customers. We will have hundreds of robots deployed in the next few years. But really the future, each one of these robots is ingesting petabytes of data. So these are moving sensors. So we're starting with the hardest use case, which is real-time situational awareness, which is security. But ultimately, we're going to start to evolve all this data and start to leverage software as the main driving force to create additional value. Just an example for deployed at Ford Motor Company, we started as perimeter security. We protect the F-150 manufacturing line, the Ford Mustang manufacturing line. There are thousands of cars there. And we were flying constantly, and they asked us, hey, can you guys apply AI people and vehicle detection? And essentially, they are asking us now to do inventory management that takes them essentially weeks to do. They're now leveraging these platforms to help them generate additional data and leveraging these automated tools to do multiple tasks. Again, going back with robotics is meant to do the dull, the dirty, and the dangerous. So I think I went over time. I try to go rapid fire. Any questions?
We have time for one quick question, if there's anyone in the audience that has one. Otherwise, I can pull a question from our online audience as well. So one question that came up online, Michael, was understanding as you scale and deploy multiple units and boxes at a particular site or along a certain site, how do you envision multiple kind of robots and drones cooperating together and communicating with one another to take certain action?
So if I understand the question is, how are we scaling air and ground operations at customer sites?
Exactly.
So we are launching the first air and ground collaboration in the next quarter. So that is actually, part of our roadmap this year. So currently, we only have aerial assets deployed. We were only recently completed that air and ground integration through that phase 2 SBIR with the RSO. And so our commercial customers, some of those commercial logos that you just saw up there will be deploying for the first time air and ground assets. But again, the premise of deploying air and ground is that they each have their own functionality. Aerial assets are eyes in the sky, rapid response, and obviously weather is their biggest limitations. With ground-based assets, they don't have that limitations. And so you can interchange between those types of assets. So, any other questions?
Hey, thanks for this. I'm curious about when you're talking about the autonomous units having petabytes of sensor data, and when you think about deploying multiple ones of these into a situation or an environment, I'd imagine the computing challenges with the hardware and how you think about that ecosystem becomes really challenging. And so I'm curious do you have ideas of how to solve that? Like, are there going to be like flying data centers coming around, like following them around? Like, do you think the compute can be done on the package, or is there going to be latency in the processing offsite and then returning to, whoever the person who needs the info is?
Yeah, so a great question. So both the aerial asset and the ground-based asset have onboard compute on there. So you're able to do a lot of that processing on the actual device, so you can limit the pipe that you have going back to the cloud. But it's really going to be interchangeable. You're going to have some that is going to be onboard compute, and some are going to be done in the cloud. It really depends on the customer. In some of the locations that we deploy, they have no internet, and so we're doing everything via LTE. So we're really adapting and being challenged by our customers by deploying in really different environments. So the reality is it's evolving. And I think that we're going to start to see a lot of those challenges being solved here in the near term. But that's certainly one of the challenges that we're considering based on all that data that we're ingesting.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Josh who's a co-founder of Aloft.
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Aloft.ai. Let's see if I can make this work here. So first of all, thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be in a room with real people and look at people in an audience that aren't in tiny little boxes. We're in the greatest city in the world, and I just want to thank you guys for having me. So super exciting. Aloft is an airspace management and drone operations platform. Our investor is a Decisive Point, a small fledgling aerospace company called Boeing, and Travelers Insurance. And a smattering of Silicon Valley folks too, that we are excited to have on our cap table. Let's see, is right forward or is left forward? We're going to find out. Okay, awesome. So we work with the FAA, we work with government, we work with private industry. We are the exclusive provider of the Before You Fly app. This is the FAA's drone application. It's available for free. To date, since we've redone it, we've done over 13 million airspace checks. We make it available as an API. If you'd like to have airspace in your application or enterprise workflow, we make that available to you. In addition, we are working with Aslan, and their tech is really cool. You saw the drone, you saw their persistent flight, and their ability to autonomously change the batteries. We are the back end behind that. So you can see all of their opportunity to make sure that there's no TFRs, which is a temporary flight restriction. And particularly for our DoD folks, terrestrial is one thing. When there's a military base on the land, great, there's a fence, there's a person, you can't go through this, right? But in the air, we don't have that. So we have to be very cognizant of what this looks like from an airspace perspective. We are very good at managing that. So Aloft is what's called a USS, that's a UAS service supplier. This is a cohort of companies blessed by the FAA to be able to say, hey, you want to fly here, we'll give you the opportunity to do that. Today, Aloft powers 54% of every authorization in the United States. So if you're looking for a data set of where people want to fly and why they want to fly there, Aloft has the largest and most comprehensive data set available today. We're working with a number of folks, cities, and our compatriots at the DHS to be able to say, hey, who's flying where? And right, this is the most important thing that we heard from DHS. Even if we wanted to shoot someone down, we don't know who to shoot down. And when we think about drones, this is a fundamental difference than we've had in aviation. And sorry, I'm going off the script because I'm excited to be here. So fundamentally, right, we've always wanted to go bigger, higher, faster. That's aviation since 1967 and the advent of the invention of the jet engine. But we're on the precipice of a new variation of aviation. This is going to be a renaissance. This is going to be an intimacy with aviation that most people have never thought of. Now it's going to be lower, right? But when I fly my Cessna, I don't care, like 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet, who cares? Between 0 and 500 feet, we're going to have more aircraft flying than ever before. That is going to have to be managed. That is going to have to be secured. That is going to have to be federated. Somebody is going to have to do that. I'm happy to tell you that Aloft is going to be the one to do that. My co-founder, John Hegrenes, we both have really, really eclectic backgrounds. He's a poker player, a finance guy. I hold a degree in poetry, and I'm happy to tell you that I'm a private pilot. And I really love this stuff. So when you look at our interface today, we love our interfaces. They're very beautiful. They're used over and over again by hundreds of thousands of drone operators and stakeholders alike. This is not the future. The future is programmatic. The future is Aslan. That's what you saw, that we have fundamental information moving to us programmatically. This is not the future. The future you're not going to see. It's just going to be API calls. So we've been working with our customers, Shell Oil, Xcel Energy, Travelers Insurance. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of flights per year. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of minutes streamed with secure live video, all from a drone. We do this both for the aerospace and the private industry, and we think that fundamentally, they're going to have to work together. So we talk about this thing called UTM, right? Universal Traffic Management. If you believe that there are going to be flying cars, if you believe that the East River over here is the busiest airspace in the world, great, then you must believe that we're not going to be able to use VHF radio to deconflict. We're not going to be able to use the technology that we have air traffic controllers, right? 50,000 people are in the air right now over the United States being controlled by people saying, do me a favor, turn right heading 090. Do you think that's going to work for millions of flights per hour? If you believe that the future is coming in the way that I do, you will know that it is not possible to do with people. It has to be done programmatically. So we have the FAA as a customer, we're working with DHS, the Civil Air Patrol as a customer, and we're looking forward to working with more and more government customers. Obviously, this is something that has to be done. And if you want the future the way I do, and I like to say I live in the future, I just have to exist here in the past, but after listening to General Nagata, I'm now worried about that concept, so I'm just going to say I'm here in the present. I'm present. That there's going to be a lot of options. One of the things that we're particularly good at is allow and deny lists. So if you're thinking about, hey, is that drone supposed to be there? Well, we can tell you, yes, it is supposed to be there. And if you don't have information to the contrary, maybe it's time to take some action, kinetic or otherwise. We were really excited to work with Aslan. We thought it was an awesome opportunity to demonstrate our technology in a programmatic fashion. And what a great use case, right? So, like perimeter border security, this is the promise of the autonomous future. We've worked on the two-way API. It's all available today. It's in production. Let us know. So I've already told you about the future, tens of millions of flights. It all has to be done programmatically. We have to be able to deconflict. We have to be able to give ourselves an allow and deny list. This is the future. We are building it. And I just want to say, I love talking about this stuff, so if you want to come bother me about it, I will talk to you all day about it. So thank you for having me. The greatest city in the world, the greatest industry in the world. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for being in person and giving us your time and attention.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Appreciate that. Any questions? We have time to take one from the audience. Okay, so let's move on to the next presentation to stay on time. Next, I want to introduce Sheena from Edge Impulse.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Sheena and I'm from Edge Impulse. So Edge Impulse is a platform for developing and deploying machine learning algorithms to edge devices. As you can see here, we basically are a total ML ops pipeline from all the way from data to deployment. And we do this in a really easy to use graphical interface. So the opportunity really today that exists within the DoD is actually being able to take all the sensor data that's being collected and honestly going unused and utilizing a platform like Edge Impulse to bring intelligence and insights to that data, ultimately deploy it to the millions of end devices that exist out there in the field. So a little bit about our team. We're founded by basically experts from the machine learning and embedded industry who really wanted to empower anyone regardless of programming knowledge or experience in machine learning to really develop these algorithms and deploy them to low power tiny devices. So this is, our founding team is Zach Shelby and Jan Youngboom, and they came from ARM, kind of with that embedded background. We've raised close to $20 million in funding to date, and to really just accelerate this mission of bringing embedded machine learning to basically all the embedded devices that are out there in the field. So some of the applications of our technology. On the commercial side, the three big areas that we really see today are predictive maintenance, asset tracking, as well as human and animal monitoring. So when you look at the predictive maintenance side, really being able to understand when a piece of equipment or machinery is trending towards failure or is not functioning as it should be. And this can extend to anything from heavy equipment or machinery to motors and pumps as well. On the asset tracking side, being able to allow an asset to really understand its environment, give it that intelligence as it moves from stage to stage of its life cycle, really being able to give that awareness to the asset. And then finally, on the human and animal health monitoring side, this is essentially what we piloted with our partner organization, FireHUD. And so you'll see a little bit more about this, but wearables are just a huge area for us. You know, we're moving beyond just the superficial level of streaming data and showing that to the user. How do we derive more insights from that data and give the user more intelligence on what's happening, you know, as they're performing different activities? So that's really where a platform like Edge Impulse can help make sense of this data and bring intelligence to the sensors. And then on the government and defense side, we pretty much see exactly the same types of applications. We're starting to see them more and more kind of pop up here. But really the biggest opportunity is taking all of the devices that are already out there in the field today, the hardware that's deployed, the sensors that are collecting data, old hardware that really has no intelligence, and taking that data and basically creating these algorithms that can just bring more intelligence to that data. As long as you have the ability to go and upgrade that hardware out in the field, you don't need to go and do a hardware redesign. You can just do a software upgrade and bring a lot of these new capabilities to older hardware sitting out there in the field today. So some of our existing traction, we're an ongoing subcontractor with a current DoD customer. We have proposals pending right now with NASA, Jake, one of the Army program offices as well. And we just continue to find more and more opportunities like this for edge and embedded machine learning. And so really the opportunity here is quite ripe. And one of the benefits of actually running on the edge is you can start to attack applications that were not accessible before, that maybe required connectivity or the cloud to be able to process a lot of this data. We actually do that processing on the device itself. And so it starts to open up more and more applications where you're in those low connectivity environments. So you can start doing things like underwater sensors or sensors in space where internet connection is not readily available. So for our pilot today, we're going to basically show a wearables use case. We partnered with an organization, FireHUD, who has created a wearable device for monitoring firefighter and first responders' different biometric signals. And what we did with them is we took their core temperature data and really used it to train a heat exhaustion algorithm that would run directly on their device. And so, without further ado, I'll go ahead and navigate to the video.
The problem FireHUD is trying to solve is overexertion injuries. The smart PPE industry is headed towards smarter sensors, smarter metrics. For instance, today FireHUD and other gas sensor detecting companies just simply measure heart rate or detect certain gases in the air. But in the future, FireHUD, for instance, will be able to measure things like exertion or exhaustion, where really we aggregate a whole bunch of sensor data into more usable metrics for something like incident commanders to use.
Our mission is to enable developers to add machine learning capabilities to their existing embedded devices. So our company's values are focused around technology for good. We want to make sure that as machine learning becomes more powerful and more used, that it's actually utilized for applications that benefit society and improve things overall.
This collaboration with Edge Impulse is important for us, so that way you can provide first responders, military members, or industrial workers the ability not just to see what someone's core temperature is at a given instant, but what it could become in 5 to 10 minutes.
As we know, firefighting is a really important mission across all platforms in DoD, whether it's an air base or a Navy ship, and understanding the situational awareness of those fighting the fire is really important, and it also expands to a lot of other areas across DoD, understanding perhaps the fatigue of the warfighter on the battlefield as well.
There's been a lot of analyzing their data, looking at all of the biometric readings that they've collected from users in the past, and then determining from that, okay, what higher level insights, what larger patterns can we extract from that and effectively predict in the realm of firefighting or of first responders, what is important for those users to know, to quickly have access to in terms of information.
It might be common in a lot of these use cases or these hot jobs for someone's core temperature to become 101 degrees Fahrenheit, but what's very valuable information is to know whose core temperature is going to become 102 degrees Fahrenheit in the next 5 to 10 minutes. That way there can be an intervention or a checkup to make sure that they don't end up hurting themselves.
The DoD a lot of time is overburdened with legacy systems, and Edge Impulse can come in and integrate with these existing technologies and make sensors smarter. What this does, it helps the end users gain situational awareness about the local environment and a better understanding of the platforms and sensors that they're using.
We want it to be simple so that a firefighter just comes on shift in the morning, puts it on, there's nothing to configure, and there's no on button that they could forget to press, and then at the end of the shift they just are able to take it off, and during the entire shift if there ever was a problem, then whoever's in charge of safety there would receive an alert, the firefighter themselves could receive an alert, and just making the system easy to use on a daily basis like that.
I'm very excited to be working with FireHUD. I think it's one of the coolest projects I've had the opportunity to work on, creating technology that's helping save lives and protect our first responders. I'm just really excited and honored to be a part of it.
Okay, so yeah, great work by the Edge Impulse team as well as our partner organization, FireHUD, and really bringing this together. Honestly, it's been a couple of weeks that we've been working on this pilot, so it's truly a testament to how quickly people can actually develop these algorithms and deploy them to their actual hardware. This was, again, like a matter of weeks that we were able to accomplish this, and we're going to continue to work on this problem alongside the DHS, who kind of helped us identify it in the first place. So with that, I do think I'm kind of over time, but these are sort of just the next steps for Edge Impulse as a platform. We're going to continue to expand to new industries, continue to look for more opportunities within the defense and government, and of course, continuously improve our platform and start to integrate a lot more things around data privacy and data security, moving towards things like SOC 2 and HIPAA compliance, which are going to be of benefit not only to the government, but a lot of our commercial customers on the medical side as well as the consumer side. And so thank you for your time. Please, come to us with any edge machine learning or embedded machine learning applications that you have. David and Joe are also here at the demonstration today. So after, if you'd like to come in, understand a little bit more about the work they've done on the pilot project, more than happy to go over that with you and answer any questions. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Sheena. We're going to move to the next presentation. I'd like to introduce Spencer Hay from Pilot AI.
Okay, let me see if I can get this close enough to my face. So the first thing you probably notice is I'm pretty tall. I'm big, right? And one of the biggest takeaways that I want you to have from Pilot is that our stuff is small, right? So think the opposite of me when you look at me, right? So Pilot AI, oh, where are we going here? Here we go. So we developed computer vision algorithms with groundbreaking efficiency. So essentially what we did is we took algorithms that are big like me, and instead of taking those algorithms and trying to make them small, we took the opposite approach. We actually just built our own framework that's small, works very compute efficiently. And we run in a broad range of hardware solutions from microcontrollers. So think about the controller that's, the microcontroller that's inside of your remote control at your home. We can run as compute efficient to work inside something like that. You can see we've raised $9 million. We have a number of investors. NEA is one of our big ones. I'm the head of sales, but we've got a great team that has built this incredibly powerful, compute efficient platform. So some of our technology applications, we have object detection, segmentation, classification, tracking, mapping, identification. We have an end-to-end training pipeline for data management, annotation, and model retraining. So we're extremely efficient with everything that we do. Some of our consumer and commercial applications, we're in security and surveillance. So we're in like doorbell cameras that are, we power AI in those doorbell cameras. You can see a picture there of that. We're in home security cameras, commercial security cameras. We're in teleconferencing products, everything from, we work with one of the world's largest set-top box manufacturers to create a more immersive teleconferencing experience, leveraging our computer vision AI. We're doing the same thing in the commercial sector with intelligent video sound bars. So inside of when you're having a teleconference inside of your conference room, we're powering that. We work in fitness products, so think mirrored fitness products. In industrial, we're working with safety compliance and monitoring, checking when you have hard hats, when you're properly fastened to the equipment that you need to be fastened to, social distancing, government defense, which is what we're here for, is ground-based surveillance, tactical medium altitude ISR, and high altitude ISR. So some of our existing traction we have a couple phase 1 applications right now, and then we're also in a phase 2, right? So these engagements are both ground and aerial use cases, and so our future interest is in force protection, remote sensing on CubeSats, and edge deployment in denied environments. So the great thing about working on the edge is when you do have that, denied environment where communication channels aren't working, our stuff will work on the edge. And we're about to talk about a couple different, in the video that's coming up here, we've got a body camera that our stuff is working on. We'll see a quick demonstration of that. And then we'll also see some aerial footage with our partner, Collins Aerospace. So here's the video. You're all going to be blown away with this first one because it's literally command lines. But what this is really demonstrating is that we're working on a commodity processor in a commercially available body camera, and it's running person detection. So this is just, we're showing you the proof that that our stuff does work. It's working again in a body camera right now, and we're getting detections that are happening. And then here's some footage courtesy of Collins Aerospace, and you can see all the detections. Now we're detecting vehicles in this, but we have a secure training platform where we can train on multiple different types of objects to recognize and detect, and we can run in flight on those sensors. So some of the success and learnings on that body camera. So the current challenge is right now when a law enforcement officer or anyone that has a body-worn camera, when they need to record something, they typically have to manually turn that body camera on. We can automatically detect when there is a person or a vehicle in the scene, and we can automatically turn that camera on. So we remove that burden from the law enforcement officer, and it will just happen automatically. And then we can also record, so we'll record when we see those people and vehicle in the scene, scenes of interest. And what this does, it essentially reduces the storage costs and needs, so we can do it on-site on the body camera itself. But then when they dock that and upload the video, if there's lots of video that's recorded that doesn't have anything of interest in that, we can let them know where the video of interest is, so that as people are looking through and analyzing these videos, they can focus on what matters. And that reduces a lot of cost. In the aerial FMV, we've got so traditional CV, which detects objects moving against the background, and the traditional CV can't detect and track things at the same time. Ours is going to do that. Solutions needed in these denied environments, like I mentioned before, we're going to work on the sensor, we're going to work in flight, and we can actually send updates in flight for iteration as the mission is ongoing. So what's next for us? We want to be a top third-party AI vendor, and in this space, to provide this very compute-efficient edge capability in multiple different types of environments. And so with that, I'll go ahead. I'm out of time right now, so I'll go ahead and take any questions from anybody.
Yeah, thanks.
For those of us that are not as tech savvy, can you explain why having that small packet size is important and some of the things it allows you to do that your competitors can't?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, so as I mentioned before, like with my really terrible analogy, having big algorithms, it is a challenge to work in these really compute-constrained environments. So when we can work in really compute-constrained environments, like for our live demonstration, we'll be working on basically a $40 computer. It's a Raspberry Pi. That $40 computer can actually run two simultaneous video streams. So when you can run in those really compute-constrained environments, it opens up a whole lot more capability. You get a lot more for less. So whenever I'm shopping, I always want more for less. And so, to make a really simple analogy, that's what we do. We give a whole lot more for a whole lot less with the same capabilities that you would get with these really big bloated algorithms.
Thanks a lot, Spencer. We're going to move on to our next presentation. Next, we'll have Frame on stage, represented by Dustin.
Thanks, everyone. Going back through the old presentation. There we go. I'm Dustin from Frame. We're mapping humanity. The whole reason that we're here is because we're building very localized data about human population characteristics for virtually every country in the world. So we're using machine learning technology to give people the ability to zoom in on a specific neighborhood or community or place of interest and know more than you've ever been able to know before about how many people live there, what those people do for a living, what their behaviors are, what kind of media they access, how they feel, for example, about the US or China. Really rich information about the human and information environment at a very local level that, again, has not been available before at this kind of scale. So we've been on a journey for about 2 years now to really understand how to make this work for users in the national security community. And I've been really grateful to be a part of the NSIN Propel program as a step further in trying to make sure that we're meeting the specific needs of folks in this area. And what we've learned, and some of the big points of concern or points of need that are communicated to us, is that, you know, when we look at a lot of the capabilities that we have broadly for intelligence analysis, for information operations, and especially for prosecuting the types of missions that General Nagata was talking about when we think about great power competition and counterterrorism, we have, you know, broadly no source of systematic, comprehensive, comparable data across the world of what populations look like. And that human dimension, and especially that local human dimension, is critically important for being able to successfully do the missions that we need to perform. You know, having national level information about, for example, as you're seeing in this map, how people might feel toward China and Afghanistan is not adequate when we're really trying to think about local needs, local missions, and local operations. So, you know, with that in mind, I'm not going to talk a bunch about the team. We've been trying to build a team that can really focus on these national security issues. As a quick aside, I think it's important to note that a big part of being a part of a program like this, in addition to a lot of great insight and connections and opportunities to demo and iterate, is also the opportunity for our team to get exposed to and familiar with and empathetic toward the missions of the national security community. We've got a lot of people from a lot of backgrounds in our company that are now excited about being a part of the fight and being a part of contributing to the missions here. We're truly a dual use capability. We built this company focused on missions like global public health. We've done a lot of work thinking about distributing COVID vaccines and similar things. Built the company to help energy companies and consumer goods companies and others that are trying to understand their customers and reach those folks. But as I said, we've also been iterating to understand how this works for users in the national security space. And, you know, I've had some, I think, useful traction so far. We've got 3 Phase 2 cyber contracts that we're working to grow through various means. Partnering with AFWorks to be able to accomplish those has been a huge benefit for us, as we've been able to find some really dedicated users that can help us think about missions. In particular, so far, missions focused on threat assessment, intelligence analysis when we look at specific places and know a lot more based on our understanding of the population about potential threats or issues there, and also focused on information operations and understanding how we can use this data to improve our ability to, you know, really perform actions in the information space. And that's, you know, you're seeing one of our customer products visualized here when it comes to thinking about threat assessment locally in a way that provides a whole new dimension of analysis to think about threats that are coming from extremist activity or other vulnerabilities, political, otherwise, that we can see in these populations that we need to understand when we think about where we operate. But, you know, as we think about the opportunity to use this program to pilot and to improve what we're trying to bring to the community here, we've really focused in particular on special operations missions and have had the opportunity to provide data to and iterate with users that are thinking about how to bring this type of human terrain, I would say far advanced human terrain information, to inform the work that they're trying to do. And I think some of the clear takeaways from our, you know, engagement so far, or I might say the unfair advantages that we can provide in the space, have become pretty clear. You know, first, we're providing a type of atmospherics, a type of general intelligence support that hasn't been available before, that becomes a very useful input for many products, many missions. We're providing a capability that allows our users to assess the effects of different activities that they want to track, whether we're thinking about the effects of exercises, of an adversary activity, of some of our own activities. This solves a tremendous need for the defense community writ large, and we've received a lot of feedback from our users that this is one of the most important things we can do for them. We've also been able to look at missions like operational preparation and other things that can go into really understanding a population so folks can operate more effectively on the ground. And also missions like civil affairs or humanitarian relief and disaster assistance, where understanding the population and their needs, and also understanding, for example, Chinese influence on those populations is a tremendous advantage for being able to allocate our resources effectively. So those are some of the takeaways from some of the effort that we've been able to do to engage, especially with users in the special operations community as part of NSIN Propel. And I think, to give you one anecdote, one of our users recently mentioned that we could give them, off the shelf, a map that gave more insight than they could typically extract from 2 weeks of looking at the survey data that they had previously. So, we've been able to learn that there's a tremendous information advantage here, especially when it comes to prioritizing and allocating resources. And a number of our users have talked about how determining relevance and determining where to focus is one of the things that is the biggest problem in their day-to-day work, and that's something that we're able to really factor into when it comes to their workflows and needs. So, as I wrap up, we're ambitious to grow. Like I said, we're serious about building a foundational map of humanity that can not just support the needs of the defense and intelligence communities, but also a number of other industries globally. But as we look at the next couple of years, we're really working to grow our current customer relationships, especially with the Air Force, as I mentioned, as well as to identify and deliver data to and meet the needs of other users across the defense and intelligence communities. Again, truly a dual use capability, because everything that we do and everything that we're supported, especially with our innovation work with the DoD to do, improves our ability to deliver commercially as well. As we expand in new geographies, as we produce new types of local population data, all those capabilities don't just serve our national security customers, but also translate into the direct needs of multinational companies, global health organizations, and the other types of commercial customers that I mentioned. So glad for the opportunity to speak to you today. Hope we can speak more. And thanks again to the organizers of the NSIN Propel program for allowing us to participate.
Thank you so much, Dustin. Next, I'd like to have Connor from Infer join us on stage. Thanks.
Hi, good morning. It's been so wonderful listening to all the presentations here this morning. I think my key takeaway so far, though, is we need a really cool video like Edge Impulse. So hopefully we can connect here at some point during the day, and we can get hooked up with whoever worked on that for you. My name's Connor. I work in business development for Infer. Infer is a secret computing company. Secret computing is also known as privacy-preserving machine learning, or PETS, privacy-enhanced technologies. Big picture, though, we make it possible for companies or users to analyze data without ever seeing the data or without requiring any kind of data transfer. It's done through a series of cryptographic techniques, but the key takeaway, though, is that privacy and precision is maintained in the output relative to plain text computing. This is our team. We've taken in an aggregate now about $20 million in funding. We just announced another investment about 2 weeks ago. It's an amazing team with multidisciplinary background. As you might imagine from a technology like ours, it involves everything from data science to data engineering, cryptography, number theory. We think we're pretty smart. We got a smart team. These people think we're pretty smart too. We had our Series A investment round in late 2018 that was led by JP Morgan as our strategic investors, as you might imagine. You can see here from some of the logos. Most of our early commercial partners are in the financial services space. There's a myriad of opportunities that they have within the financial services space to use our technology. Some that are kind of rising to the top here are areas like fraud detection, areas like credit model building, alternative data analysis and procurement, like you're seeing with hedge funds, and privacy-preserving machine learning device intelligence. So being able to perform machine learning analysis in a secure way on data that's being derived from lots of devices. In the government and defense space, though, we've seen some interest and use in predictive maintenance. Like imagine being able to perform analysis on jet engine failure or predictive analysis, threat detection, and cross-jurisdictional model building. Being able to operate on data that is located in geographies outside of where you're at. If you're in America, operating on data in China, operating on data in European Union countries. As far as DoD customer goes in terms of our traction, it's a new area for us. We spent so much time on financial services. That's part of the reason why we're in this program and why we're really excited about it. We've seen interest, or we participated at the GIFIX competition out in California about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I know that some of the other folks that are part of the cohort here participated as well. We have some interest from JSOC, given that they have in-house machine learning data scientists. We've also seen some interest from professors at the Naval Postgraduate School. And as far as future DoD interests go, really our focus here is on units or agencies that have in-house data scientists that are looking to be able to perform analysis on complex data sets in a distributed manner. For the NSIN Propel demonstration, what we did is we actually mocked up a sandbox environment. And the scenario that we put together was, imagine a number of joint intelligence agencies being able to analyze each other's data, and also data that was procured and derived from a wireless telecom provider. And what they're looking to do is they're trying to find a unique, explicit attribute in each other's data sets to try to find a bad actor. By running what's called private set intersection or doing a private join, they're able to do that. So they're able to not have to share the data. They make their data available without having to encrypt it directly. The analysis is performed on it. The bad actor is found. Anybody else who does not match is ignored. And the resulting output is derived from the wireless telecom provider, which is the last 5 latitude and longitude coordinates of the bad actor. Okay, so if you didn't catch any of that, if you don't know anything about data science or data engineering or cryptography, what we did is we made this available. It's actually available on our website so that anybody can go and actually play around with this and check out the scenario and do exactly what I just described and see in the output how it works. Through this pilot, success and learnings, feedback that we've had, we've learned quite a bit. We've discovered where we think we might fit into DoD applications. We've kind of learned what might be a necessity for success, that being in-house data scientists who are actively working on machine learning problems, or who are at least aware of where the data sharing and collaboration issues are right now at present. The resulting output that we did from this exercise, which was theoretical to start with, but then became practical, like I said, anybody can kind of play around with this and use this, maintains the precision in the output, it maintains the accuracy in the output, and it keeps the data private. So what's next for us? When you think about where we're at a few years down the road, PETs, or privacy enhanced technology, secret computing, it's going to be a big part of what US corporations are focused on with respect to data privacy. That's not just me saying that. You have Gartner, you have McKinsey, you have some of the large consulting agencies saying this is a necessity. It's going to be a big part of what they're working on. We're going to continue to grow and form strategic partnerships in the right verticals that make sense to us. Right now, we're at about 30 employees distributed between the United States and Switzerland and France. We need to grow quickly to meet the demand from customers. We need to expand that to probably about 100 by 2025. And we're going to maintain our lead here as the leading provider of secret computing technology to industry. As far as the future of the product goes, there's a large number of algorithms that we support right now. We're going to continue to support more avant-garde techniques like deep learning when it comes to AI and machine learning. Those are problems that we're working on right now for our partners. And we're going to continue to work on faster performance, lowering the computational overhead associated with secret computing, as well as the number of players. Imagine going from hundreds of players or participants or data sets or data sources to millions or tens of millions or billions, like some of the challenges that we're working on for partners who are looking for hardware-based solutions. So I'll wrap it up. I know it's almost lunchtime. I'm trying to move this along here. Like I said, I'm going to be here all day. We actually were able to put this demonstration available on the web. I have it with me. I can walk you through the demonstration that we put together for NSIN. I can also show you some comparable scenarios like predictive maintenance, like I touched on, like Thales had been using. For the networking portion, please come approach me. I'm kind of socially awkward, and so if you're socially awkward, you'll have at least one person to talk to over the course of the afternoon for drinks and networking and stuff. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Connor. Appreciate that. Next, I'd like to have Drew from Macarize come on stage.
Hello, my name is Drew Ernst. I'm the Chief Business Officer for Macarize. Get this thing to work. All right. Macarize is a machine learning company, and we're focused on making core infrastructure and specifically supply chains resilient and proactive. And we've been doing that in the most challenging data and operational environments in the world. Here, we'll talk a little bit about a couple of bodies of work, one that started with AFRL and Air Force Special Operations Command around GPS-denied geolocation services. This is a PNT solution. We believe that GPS resilience is a baseline for a strong and resilient supply chain. You can't know where you're going if you don't know where you are, and so that ties into some of our supply chain work. The second one, through this partnership with NSIN Propel, we've engaged with the Air Mobility Command. AMC has a need for visibility and optimization across their supply networks. This can be anything from understanding core infrastructure like the availability of runways and skirt space to knowing and predicting for pre-positioning materials that they are going to be asked to move. This is a little bit about our team. We've raised a couple $1 million in capital. Our chief scientist is a professor of machine learning and AI at MIT. We have folks in the national security space, and I come through the supply chain world. Our technology has broad application across domains. We've done a lot in the medical supply chains. We try to work in mission critical spaces in these challenging environments. We've worked with the USAID, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and a variety of other funders and partners to deploy our technology in places like Nigeria, Mozambique, Sierra Leone, and the rough state of California for the COVID response work down there. So we've been engaged with the DoD for about 18 months through a series of SBIR Phase 1s and Phase 2s. We see our core customers in the Department of Defense as organizations that either are directly involved or tangentially involved with logistics and supply chains with the primary desire to create efficiency and broader reach with existing resources and assets. I'll talk a little bit, we'll touch shortly on a couple of things that we've done during this period. The first, again, AFRL and AVSOC on GPS-denied geolocation, and the second is around this 5 years of historical data that we have from AMC. So I'll start by talking a little bit about the problem as defined by AFRL and AVSOC on the GPS-denied geolocation. They have a variety of troops that are on the ground operating environments where they don't have GPS. It's as simple as that. A connection gets cut off, they need to find out where they are, and currently there are no real reliable solutions other than good old-fashioned step counting and dead reckoning to find your way through those spaces. So we have built to integrate with something called the Android Tactical Awareness Kit. This is called ATAC. This is a preferred technology across special forces units and more broadly across other groups and branches within the DoD and actually outside of national security as well. Police forces are using this across the country, Secret Service as well. So the outcome of the work with AFRL and AVSOC is something that we call AIM-LOCK. We basically used 8 different sensors across an Android device, along with elevation data and satellite imagery to start predicting where people are as they move through space. We are down to a 25-meter error rate, and we've done this on an extremely limited data set. This is something that we're particularly proud of, is this notion of cold start problems, the ability to learn about an individual or a thing with very little historical data. The places where we operate and you all operate, you don't have the luxury of reams and reams of highly curated historical data, so we have to be able to work with what we have when we have it. Importantly and essentially, AIM-LOCK runs on device without connectivity. Of course, this wouldn't be useful if it did not. It's highly resilient to intervention, and we are currently, in fact, just 45 minutes ago in discussions with the TAC program office to be integrating this at scale, and very much looking forward to doing that. We need to do quite a bit more testing at scale. You're thinking of thousands and thousands of individual missions that we need to start learning from. Our AMC pilot is just getting started. Again, we're looking at 5 years of historical data. This is going to be a retrospective analysis. How do we look backward and provide visibility into your network to give you something meaningful? Where should you be pre-positioning assets? Can you understand the resilience of your supply chain network across a variety of nodes and edges? We've done this before. This is not the first time that we've done this. A lot of the work that we've done in this space around visibility is in healthcare. Again, I talked about California. In the state of California, they were struggling to understand the state of infrastructure across their health safety network. So which clinics and hospitals actually have backup power to be taking on and caring for COVID patients. We were able to take them from what they had over 10 years accumulated 8% of visibility across the state of California into those in real time. We took them to 100% visibility in real time in less than 6 weeks. So we've done this before, and the objective is to apply what we've been doing there to the network that AMC services. So there it is. The work that we've done in the last 18 months really constitutes an expansion outside of what I would consider our primary market, which has been the healthcare market. There's an opportunity for Macrise to build a business that has a broad multi-domain impact. Going deep with the DoD is an opportunity with us because of our expertise in mission critical spaces and places where data environments and operational environments are particularly challenging. Our product will remain focused on 3 core pillars that we've started with we've worked on from the start. One is visibility into a network, 2 is forecasting demand, and the 3rd is understanding the individual participant behavior within that network. That can be a buyer or consumer, or that can be somebody participating in driving that supply chain network forward. And we have a growing interest around understanding predictive maintenance as well. I know that was just brought up. This is something that's explicit in understanding how available assets are within a network, and that can become explicit going forward. The DoD is the largest supply chain in the world. We're beginning work with that supply chain. So customer at scale, DoD a customer at scale is efficacy and impact that can't be equaled. So looking forward to working with you all. Thank you for the opportunity for being here.
Thanks a lot, Drew. Next, I'd like to have Brian from Project Owl.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and see you all at an in-person event. These feel increasingly rare these days. I'm Brian Knaus, co-founder and CEO of Project Owl, and today I'll be introducing our company and a little bit about what we do today. So Project Owl is an adaptable and cost-effective unified network solution, and we do this through a unique interplay of hardware and software. We do this through a hardware device, the DuckLink, very simple, easy to use, and quite cost competitive relative to its peers in the market. And we combine that with a software analytics and data visualization system, the Owl DMS or data management system. And these two solutions together can inspire rapidly deployable, easy to use and cost effective communications and sensor networks from austere rural environments to dense urban situations on the ground, water, or in subterranean locations. During the NSIN Propel program, Project Owl will be working on a pilot demonstration with kind of 2 variations, one showcasing our application for communications and sensor networks in dense urban environments, as well as a similar application but in a deep forest environment, showcasing again rapidly deployable communications and sensor networks. We've put together a wonderful team of technologists, hackers, as well as more recently financial and operational folks as we've continued to grow. We're a small team, only a couple years old, and as we've witnessed some rapid growth in our short journey, we've continued to add in more folks who can make our team more robust and prepared for growth and to handle the new customers and applications we find ourselves in. One of the unique aspects of our technology, I think, is the wide array of applications we can target, and we're able to do that because of how adaptable and customizable our technology is. And one reason for that is the open source firmware we've developed and released alongside the Linux Foundation to run all of our hardware. It's called the ClusterDuck Protocol, and we've grown that community from 5 to over 800 individuals across 20 time zones in just the last year and a half. And this enables us to apply as a true dual-use company to commercial markets, from rapidly deployable communications and sensor networks for communities that have been affected by natural Our first focus, and the reason our company was founded, coming on the heels of 4 major Atlantic hurricanes, Maria, Irma, Harvey, and Florence. In a 12-month time span, these 4 hurricanes inflicted over $300 billion in damage and cost over 10,000 lives. So our first focus was to bring back communications rapidly and simply and cost effectively for communities that need it. Outside of that, we're also very interested in needs in the oil and gas industry for autonomous sensor networks to help empower these organizations more efficiently pull oil out of the ground, understanding when they're getting gas leaks when they shouldn't, but also help empower us with data in the future to better understand the greenhouse gas emissions we're putting into our environment, from a huge offshore oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico to a rural oil field in the middle of Wyoming. This same technology can be leveraged for logistics and fleet management. Imagine a crate of tomatoes coming from a farm in Mexico to a market in Germany. We can apply duck links to these shipments to monitor their location, their temperature, humidity, other sensor information, get that data easily up to the cloud. And that's in addition to a rapidly growing market for us in the Department of Defense, providing easy-to-use, cost-effective, and highly customizable communications and sensor networks for tactical units across the Army, such as Rangers, Task Force Green, as well as in the Air Force and Navy. As I was just speaking to, in the last 18 months, we've gotten kind of dove in the deep end of the DoD. We've closed several SBIR and STTR contracts. Most recently, we just closed an STTR Phase 2, partnered with Columbia University, sponsored by Air Force 724 STG. And the main buckets of R&D for that contract was to implement several capabilities that were requested by all the other units we had prototyped and sent kits to. So all the other groups you'll see on there, such as Army Task Force Green, Army Rangers, 5th SFG USASOC, TACPs, 101st Airborne, all of them ask for a couple things like encryption, security and isolation protocols, and hybrid network backhauls, the ability for us to get data out of our networks deployed on the ground through SATCOM, through cellular, and other means. Those developments were just delivered to our Air Force end users through that STTR Phase 2, and we're very interested to go back to some of our other interested customers that we sent prototypes to originally and show them the new developments that we've baked in. So again, during this NSIN Propel demonstration, we're taking this opportunity to showcase how our solution can be leveraged in 2 distinct environments. A dense forest environment. You can see I took that photo yesterday in a deep forest. There's a duck link there, showing how you can leverage this cost-effective network in that particular environment, as well as in a dense urban environment. A great one is right where we are in New York City, and we'll be showcasing the deployment of a duck link network in this environment. Again, what we're able to do during these deployments is to deploy 5 to 10, possibly more duck link devices in both locations. We'll be leveraging handheld devices as well as our solar-powered variants. So these operate off-grid and completely off of traditional networks. We'll be implementing several different types of sensor technologies, and these include infrared motion sensors, gas sensors, climate sensors, and other types of things. Usually, these sensors that we choose have been the same ones that are requested by our DoD counterparts and those we prototyped for. We're doing this with our 915 megahertz LoRa duck links, operating at 9.6 kilobits per second, low bandwidth, very easy to use. They can connect to any phone or user device, and this is how we integrate with folks on the ground, such as connecting an ATAC or GeoChat is right over Bluetooth. And again, we'll be doing this in the dense urban and deep forest environments. We're very excited about what's next. We have a lot of research and development we're focusing on for our technology, improving our open source community, improving our hardware, designing our manufacturing chain to be more resilient and robust, kind of getting off of our reliance on Chinese electronics and moving to new electronics that we've just designed and started manufacturing here in the United States. We're very excited to leverage our relationships we meet through programs like this to find new opportunities to deploy prototypes and find interested customers where we can fill needs with our unique capability. And we're going to continue working with Decisive Point and NSIN to identify other applications of this technology as we've done over the last 18 months and find new ways we can customize our solution to provide a unique capability to the folks that need it. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Brian. And lastly, we'd like to invite Jung-Ah Lee to the stage for our final cohort presentation today.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. My name is Jung-Ah Lee, founder and CEO of Aura Intelligent Systems. We are developing a disruptive high-resolution imaging radar, which is, radar itself is a 100-year-old technology, and we'd like to bring disruption to this area. As we know, automation and autonomous vehicles need sensors with high resolution that works in all kinds of environments. And we looked at the technology that's available today. What is the problem of today's radar for emerging applications? It really is based on outdated technologies from the 60s that has limitations in emerging applications, such as requiring dedicated spectrum and hardware to build it, making unnecessarily very complex. And it has very poor performance, especially in challenging urban environments where there may be interference and jamming that is going to arise. And it has very poor resolution, making it difficult to detect small objects such as drones and birds in the environment. And also it lacks scalability to support very large deployment. Our solution is leverage the advances of wireless communication, utilizing that hardware to build a high-resolution, more cost-effective solution for this challenge. Our pilot is really the first demonstration of digital imaging radar with 5G millimeter wave radio. Our R&D and technology is being funded by NSF SBIR and also Activate Entrepreneurs Fellowship with DARPA MTO and MIT Lincoln Lab. We have secured about $1 million investment funding through non-equity grants from NSF, FWorks contract, and Activate Fellowship, supplemented by some angel investment. I myself come from Samsung Networks, ITO Star Networks, and Lucent Technologies Bell Labs. Our development is led by Insub Lee, who comes from Infineon and Nagier Systems with rich experience in wireless and sensor technology. Seung-Ho Hwang comes from leadership position at Samsung Semiconductor and Hyundai Motor Company, and who is also a lead inventor of HDMI, which we use every day. We are supported by a strong group of advisors. My PhD advisor, Dave Munson, who really pioneered synthetic aperture radar imaging in the 80s, which is currently used for national defense applications. There are multiple technology applications of this technology. The solution is not there. So in the commercial side, we envision autonomous vehicles all the way to advanced air mobility application, logistics and transportation automation, and industrial applications with the smart factories, robotics and AR/VR application. On the government sector and defense, there's overlapping applications. In addition, it can be used for counter UAS application, going to critical infrastructure safety and urban area defense application, and also detecting hidden objects and hazardous materials for security and public safety applications. We have some traction with the DoD customer our existing traction includes some SBIR, STTL success. We are a winner of Air Force Agility Prime, which is focusing on urban air mobility technologies. So we are just completing STTR phase 1 today and going to phase 2 proposal with Air Force Research Lab and some end users. There's interest in this application for security application from PEO Digital at Hanscom Air Force Base. And we also responded to Department of Energy's ARPA-E Open program, which is looking at networks for energy saving in urban air mobility. Future DoD interests might include the counter-UAS solution in really all agencies, critical infrastructure security applications, and so on. So with this kind of application, with the network of sensors, we envision autonomous operation of the situational awareness in all domains. For the NSIN Propel demonstration, we are still a little bit of early stage, but we were able to connect our radar capability implemented on the FPGA platform and connect with 5G millimeter wave radio to demonstrate the capabilities of the technology. In addition, we were able to build unified platform with the same waveform, same technology for PNT applications in partnership with Arizona State University. So key performance indicators we demonstrated was that compared with 5G waveform, our technology is, I think there's something wrong in the slide deck, so sorry about that. So we were able to demonstrate 10 times energy efficiency compared with 5G technology. 5G has really a problem with the power amplifier efficiency, so we were able to address it with this technology. We are getting expected resolution from the technology, meaning 8 centimeter resolution with the current prototype system and angle resolution of 2 degrees without having to build huge array. And this can have many advantages going to DoD applications, such as detecting small objects, etc., and also working in interference and jamming limited environments. And yeah, we are ready to go and build fully functional, full-spec prototype system with Agility Prime STTR phase 2 and some other applications as well. Okay, so in a few years, in the future, we want to be the player in smart infrastructure for autonomous mobility. Today's network is built for data, smartphone applications. Nothing is built specifically for vehicles moving around autonomously. So this will provide the necessary communication and sensing capability, and we will put ourselves on the path to be a 6G company. Our product and market strategy is first really address small-scale deployment, such as in campus deployment in DoD bases and industrial bases, and then expand it to a larger network for transportation and urban air mobility. So working with government, we would like to really bring this disruptive technology for DoD customers to meet their mid to long-term needs, and work with various government agencies such as Air Force and DOE and NSF to bring back competitive advantage, competitive superiority in wireless network technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Junga. So this concludes our startup presentations for today. And again, want to thank everybody for all their effort over the last several months in getting to where we are. To kind of conclude the virtual portion of today's event, I wanted to invite on stage Pete LaMonica, who's been an incredible partner of ours over the last 6 months and has spent time every week with all of our startups, getting to learn their technologies and find opportunities for them within DoD. So thanks, Pete, and looking forward to some closing remarks.
Thank you. It's so great to be with you all. It's so inspiring to be in this building that's so rich in history. I love World War II history. I'm more of a B-17, B-29 kind of guy, boxcar, Enola Gay. But you know, being in the building where the Arizona was built and the Missouri was built is just truly remarkable. But more importantly, you know, I think it's being with you all. You know, these are the kind of events that we need to be doing more of as a research lab, but also as a community of researchers across the DoD and into commercial space. So as Sahil mentioned, I'm from AFRL, Air Force Research Lab, Information Directorate, which is headquartered up in Rome, New York, the other New York, right, upstate New York. I'm born and raised in Rome. Did my undergrad at Albany, did my master's at Syracuse, so I am about as upstate New York as it comes. But it's always great to come down to the city and come here. So we were talking last night about, I was sharing that I had 2 kids, and my kids are 8 and 6, and I really don't get a whole lot of time to watch TV, as you can imagine. Usually, I mean, I'm either, you know, with the family or, you know, working, and typically they're watching TV. But anyways, when I do get to watch, I like to watch Marcus Lemonis. If any of you know Marcus, he always talks about 3 things: people, process, and products. And so, you know, just talking real briefly about people, I just want to applaud NSIN, you know, Dan Madden, John Rivnak, and I, about a year ago, sketched this out. So thank you to John, thank you to Dan, thank you to John for joining me and letting me, you know, go on this journey with you guys. I want to thank Decisive Point, New Labs, all the people that have put this on and made this work. And also I want to point out, give a special thanks to our Chief Engineer from the Information Directorate, Karen Roth. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being involved, Karen. And also Mr. Matt Cohan, who is the RIE Intelligent Information Systems Division Tech Advisor. So thanks for your involvement through this process, along with other CTC leads. That's our version of tech portfolios, for those that aren't familiar with AFRL lingo, that have had a helping hand in this cohort. I couldn't do this on my own, so again, thank you to everybody. Secondly, I want to talk about the process, right? So we started with almost 200 companies, and that totally blew my mind. I thought that was incredible, and we got it down to 12. And in doing that, you know, we've done many engagements, demo days, and now today is kind of our pinnacle of this cohort. So again, thanks to all those involved in helping facilitate that. And lastly, I want to talk about products. We just heard from 11 amazing companies that have a variety of products, and I want to be, you know, your champion. I want to help get those products into the field, help vector, help shape the capabilities and align with weapon systems. Because I think that's what's really important, is the relationship that we need to build with the product centers, whether it's Air Force or another service or another department even. And so tying this all back together to where we started this morning, we heard from General Nagata. He talked about great power competition. In the Air Force and in the direction that we've gotten, it's now being called strategic competition. I like great power competition a little bit better, to be honest with you. But anyways, it's kind of above my pay grade, so we're going to call it strategic competition. And that leads me to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Brown, put out a rallying cry about a year ago, and he said, you know, we need to accelerate change or lose. And I love that. And so I'm going to talk real quick about three quick things. You know, we heard earlier from Pyson about the acquisition process, how we can go faster, and I entirely agree with that. Second thing is what we're doing here right now, engaging with you all in industry and educating folks and having these type of technical exchanges, right? We can't do that in a stovepipe or in a vacuum. And so these type of events, these types of cohorts are paramount. And then the last thing that I want to mention briefly is this notion of limited objective experiments. And so what is a big passion of mine is looking at how we can help bridge the proverbial valley of death. And one of the things that I think we can do a better job of, especially from the research community, is working closer with warfighters and being able to demonstrate to them, hey, look at this cool capability, and let's show how we can validate it, but also show how much better this capability can be over the existing tech. And so one of the things that I'm working on putting together in upstate New York, partnered with the 174th Attack Wing in Syracuse. We have partners up at Fort Drum. We're working with folks in the Vermont Air National Guard that fly F-35s. We're pulling together what's called, we're going to be calling a future flag. So this is a spin-off of two things. One, the Air Force has a lot of flag exercises that are around operational readiness. They don't really have anything for, you know, R&D. And two, Air Force Futures down at the Pentagon, they have future games, right, which is a big war game, and they tell us all the time how bad we lose, right? So, okay, that's cool, but what are we doing about that? So now let's take the output of that future game and figure out where we need to go make strategic investments and demonstrate new capabilities. And so, you know, let this be a call to action. You know, we need all of you. I'm interested in the next steps and in the outcomes of this cohort. So with that, I think I'm the guy standing between you and lunch. So just want to say thank you for coming and look forward to engaging with you through the rest of the day.